Chapter 663. Zhao Feng's heart skipped a beat as he looked at the thin book in his hand. He didn't think that the demigod's study would contain information regarding the 8 great god eyes. However, this book was very thin, and the content inside was pitifully small. It wasn't like the 10,000 Ancient Races ranking, which was a thick book that had a comprehensive analysis of the history and special abilities of some races. Even so, Zhao Feng was extremely excited. His left eye was very likely to be a type of god eye, the 9th god eye. With this thought in mind, Zhao Feng slowly opened the 8 great god eyes. After the primal chaos, when the fan universe was formed, the 8 great god eyes were born. Zhao Feng's attention was attracted by the content of the book. According to the book, the 8 great god eyes were extremely unique and stood above heaven and earth. Because of their uniqueness, the 8 great god eyes weren't listed on the 10,000 Ancient Races ranking. Otherwise, every god eye would be ranked in the top 20 of the 10,000 races, and even the top 10 would change. Zhao Feng understood after reading this. The 8 great god eyes were too unique, and they were closely related to the fan universe. Therefore, the 8 great god eyes were on par with the 10,000 Ancient Races ranking, and they were even more unique. The book analyzed the abilities of the 8 great god eyes. Even for demigods, the 8 great god eyes were legendary existences. The 8 great god eyes were the Samsara god eye, the Spacetime god eye, the Destiny god eye, the Death god eye, the Life god eye, and the Destruction god eye. It wasn't hard to see from the names. The 8 great god eyes were related to the fan universe's most fundamental things. Samsara, spacetime, and destiny were all abstract things. For example, the spacetime god eye represented absolute control over time and space. Zhao Feng read through all the abilities of the 8 great god eyes. In reality, most of the abilities of the 8 great god eyes were guesses and theories. Zhao Feng analyzed the abilities of the Death god eye. In front of the Death god eye, all living beings will lose their control over life and death, even heavenly gods. When Zhao Feng saw this, his heart turned cold. In the last chapter of the 8 great god eyes, Zhao Feng saw a few words, Supreme Ancestral Eye. Legend has it that when the 8 great god eyes gather, they can summon the Supreme Ancestral Eye that can alter the world and restore the order of the universe. Supreme Ancestral Eye. Zhao Feng was shocked. However, once the Ancestral Eye is opened, everything in the world will disappear. It was rumored that everything in the world was a dream of Brahma. Once the ancestral pupil opens its eyes, that dream will be destroyed. Seeing this, Zhao Feng could not help but feel a chill run down his spine. This was simply too shocking. Everything in heaven and earth was a dream, and when the Ancestral Eye opened, it would destroy the dream. Everything would cease to exist. Of course, according to the book, this was only a legend. The Supreme Ancestral Eye had never appeared since the birth of the fan universe. The 8 great god eyes did not summon the Ancestral Eye either. The book also analyzed and conjectured about the 9th god eye. 9 is the limit of numbers. The fan universe should still lack a 9th god eye. Maybe the 9 eyes combined will be able to verify the authenticity of the Supreme Ancestral Eye. Up to this point, the thin book, the 8 great god eyes, reached its end. Zhao Feng let out a long breath. The 8 great god eyes were too mysterious, and they seemed to transcend everything. Up until now, Zhao Feng had never seen a single god eye, not even the master of the demigod Forgotten Garden. After reading the 8 great god eyes, Zhao Feng calmed himself down and started to read the next book. He still needed 4 or 5 days to finish reading all the books in the library room. Zhao Feng's goal was to finish reading all the books in the library room. Up until now, no genius had ever completed this record. The demigod Forgotten Garden had many treasures, but the library room only had some knowledge. Furthermore, most of this knowledge could be found in the true martial sacred land. no one was willing to spend 2/3 of their time reading books. Zhao Feng was an exception. He cultivated the 10,000 divine thoughts technique and could multitask. Furthermore, he had truly calmed down and developed an interest in the books in the library. In the next 2 days, while reading, Zhao Feng used the Scarlet Fire Lotus to comprehend the Scarlet Destruction Wind Lightning. His keen intent greatly increased his comprehension speed. On the 7th day after entering the library room, Zhao Feng's comprehension of the Scarlet Destruction Wind Lightning had reached 20 to 30%. When a small wisp of scarlet red wind lightning appeared in Zhao Feng's palm and mixed into the purple destruction wind lightning. If I comprehend 20 to 30% of the Scarlet Destruction Wind Lightning, normal half-step kings won't be able to fight back against me. Zhao Feng murmured. The Scarlet Destruction Wind Lightning wasn't just more destructive, it also had a continuous burning effect. This meant that the damage the Scarlet Destruction Wind Lightning dealt to the target would increase by several times. Zhao Feng believed that the next time he met Lei Zhen, he would be able to gain the upper hand with the Scarlet Destruction Wind Lightning even if it countered him. In reality, if Zhao Feng used his Soul Dao I bloodline techniques against Lei Zhen, the latter wouldn't be able to fight back at all. However, right now, Zhao Feng was still holding back. Time passed by. Zhao Feng kept an eye on the situation in the graveyard. Graveyard. Meow the little thieving cat hid in a corner of a graveyard and seemed to be extremely careful. The faint golden demigod's blood floated above a large tomb. The 3 king geniuses kept each other in check, and none of them gave up. The large grave was 100 yards wide, and it was at the center of the graveyard. The graveyard was dark and cold. It was always covered in darkness, and there was an invisible power of curse. In the air, powerful vengeful spirits would occasionally fly over, revealing their mouths, fangs, and white hands. Some of them were void god realm kings and emperors when they were alive. If it was a normal genius from a sacred land, they would have lost a layer of skin even if they managed to escape alive. Luckily, it's the little thieving cat. If it were any other target, they would have died to the curse and vengeful spirits already. Zhao Feng murmured. He had kept the little thieving cat to keep an eye on the demigod's blood for a reason. Meow the little thieving cat's figure and aura merged into the darkness, and it was in a profound state. It held the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger, a sacred weapon of the Tao of Assassination. It was like the uncrowned king of the darkness, and the power of the curse that came close to it would be shattered. Boom! Boom! The battle power of the 3 king geniuses had reached the king level, and when they fought, the power of hatred and curses were all shattered. Apart from the 3 king geniuses, there were also a few geniuses from the sacred land, such as the 10 geniuses, that could stay in the graveyard. There were also those with bloodlines of the 10,000 ancient races that had the power of the god's spiritual eye. Jiang Fan was one of them, and his 10,000 ancient races bloodline could repel the power of the curse. Some geniuses of the wicked Tao that specialized in enslaving ghosts could also survive in the graveyard for a while. Apart from that, some geniuses from the sacred land wouldn't be able to survive after entering the graveyard. Some would escape, while others would die in the graveyard. Zhao Feng couldn't help but feel lucky that he didn't get involved in this. When the 3 king geniuses get tired and the consciousness of the demigod's blood is worn down, that'll be the best time for me to take action. Zhao Feng thought. However, when one's cultivation reached the level of the 3 king geniuses, the power within their bodies was almost limitless. After all, they stood at the peak of the Origin Core realm. The Origin Core realm was a huge leap in the quality of true Yuan. The Great Origin Core realm could not only easily absorb Heaven-Earth Yuan Qi, but it could also use the power of heaven and earth. Another day passed. The demigod's blood managed to escape under the control of the 3 king geniuses and entered the large graveyard. Unmarked graveyard, central graveyard. The expressions of Nan Gongsheng, Meng Shi, and Wen Luoan changed dramatically. The central graveyard was a forbidden area of the Forgotten Garden. In the past, No one was able to escape from the central graveyard every time the Forgotten Garden opened. Of course, very few people dared to enter the central graveyard. Apart from danger, there weren't many fortuitous encounters in the unmarked graveyard. Chase. The warm youth paused for a moment before quickly closing in. He was very confident in his 10,000 ancient races bloodline. Schwa. A profound silver figure was even faster than him, and chased into the central mausoleum. As expected of Nan Gongsheng. Zhao Feng sighed in his heart through the little thieving cat's eyes. From his analysis, Nan Gongsheng's raw power was the strongest amongst the three king geniuses. His strength didn't come from the bloodline of the 10,000 ancient races or the power of a king beast. Nan Gongsheng had formed king intent, and his cultivation was close to that of a king. His spatial talent and inherited battle techniques had both reached an incredible level. The ethereal body allowed him to be more compatible with heaven and earth. For the opening of the Forgotten Garden this time, the battle prowess of the geniuses of the sacred lands is also at the peak of all time. Even if it's a forbidden area, we can still barge in. Meng Shi was the third to enter the central tomb after Wen Luan. Wen Luan. As Meng Shi strode forward, she sent a message to the radiant youth. How can I help you? The warm youth chased after Nan Gongsheng and the demigod's blood. In the mausoleum passage. Buzz. Nan Gongsheng used his spatial movement technique to catch up to the demigod's blood and stop it. Let's team up and finish off Nan Gongsheng first before discussing how to split the demigod's blood. Meng Shi said. She knew a thing or two about the sunny young man. When Luoan was only able to enter the demigod Forgotten Garden with the help of the Thousand Darkness Sacred Sect. The two of them were more suitable to be allies. All right. The warm youth agreed. Nan Gongsheng's terrifying battle power and spatial abilities gave him a headache. Kill. After the two finished their discussion, they charged toward Nan Gongsheng without hesitation. The warm youth's skin seemed to be made of metal, and he glowed with a golden light as he thrust his golden hand toward Nan Gongsheng. Nightmare Dimension. Meng Shi's figure flashed forward, and a layer of hazy nightmare dimension entered the surrounding space. The power of nightmare dimension entered reality, and Meng Shi's battle power increased dramatically. She could turn the impossible into the possible. Her hair and arms became 2 or 3 times longer as she attacked Nan Gongsheng. This ability broke the limits of reality. It was unimaginable. Humph. Nan Gongsheng snickered coldly as a layer of silver light surrounded his body, and space seemed to ripple. Boom. Boom. The combined attacks of the two kings made Nan Gongsheng's body shake, and the spatial defense around him became unstable. At this critical moment, meow. A silver-gray cat merged into the darkness of the mausoleum passage, and a dark dagger appeared in its hand. At the same time, a blurry silhouette appeared in the darkness of the Eye of Void. Chapter 664. In a flash. The balance between the three king geniuses was about to be broken. Zhao Feng finally couldn't sit still anymore. Once Meng Shi and Wen Luoan team up and finish off Nan Gongsheng, the situation will become very unfavorable for me. Zhao Feng did not wish to see such a situation. No matter how strong Nan Gongsheng was or how much of a threat he posed, he was still from the same 3-star mystic true sacred clan as Zhao Feng. Relatively speaking, Meng Shi and Wen Luoan working together would bring even greater danger to Zhao Feng. Boom. Boom. Nan Gongsheng used a spatial defensive technique to block Meng Shi and Wen Luoan's attacks for a short period of time. Whoosh. With a flash of silver light, Nan Gongsheng grabbed the demigod's blood and flew out of the central tomb. Nightmare Prison. Meng Shi waved her hand, and dense dream-colored lines formed an illusory prison that merged into reality and stopped Nan Gongsheng's spatial movement. Heaven-sealing battle fist. The warm youth leaped into the air and punched out a giant golden fist that blocked off Nan Gongsheng's path of retreat. Heaven-splitting slash. Nan Gongsheng gripped the Qiankuan sword and slashed out, leaving behind spiderweb-like cracks in the air as a forbidden aura spread in every direction. Bang! Boom! Nan Gongsheng's figure shook, and the silver light around him dimmed by more than half. Amidst this, there were also the roars of exotic beasts and the pressure of the mighty power of kings. Wow! Nan Gongsheng quickly retreated as blood leaked out of his mouth. The demigod's blood in his hand also left his control. His face was gloomy, filled with hatred and unwillingness. In a one-on-one fight, the warm youth and Meng Shi probably wouldn't be a match for him. But what could he do? Meng Shi had obtained the king beast and the help of the sunny youth, the big dark horse. Get rid of him first. Meng Shi snickered coldly as her black hair grew several times longer, trapping the demigod's blood in a corner of the dream prison. The warm youth and the beast king charged toward Nan Gongsheng. While Meng Shi controlled the demigod's blood, she also used the nightmare dimension to stop Nan Gongsheng from escaping. Obviously, the two teamed up to kill Nan Gongsheng or at least severely injure him so that he wouldn't be able to fight for the demigod's blood for a while. It's not difficult for me to escape. But to give up the demigod's blood. Nan Gongsheng was helpless and unwilling. At this moment, his gaze came into contact with the void in front of him, and his heart shuddered. To be exact, Nan Gongsheng's gaze landed on the air behind Meng Shi. The blurry outline of an eye of nothingness appeared. Meow! A silver-gray thieving cat suddenly appeared in a corner of the mausoleum. Xiao! A mysterious, dark, and translucent dagger flashed through the air, leaving a trail of shadow blade light behind it. That shadow blade penetrated the darkness of the night and had a killing intent that could pierce through one's soul. Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger. The sunny young man exclaimed in a low voice and hurriedly reminded him. The reason for that was because the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger was heading straight for Meng Shi's eyes. Shadow Blade Assassination infused with a spatial secret technique. Nan Gongsheng's eyes lit up. It was hard to imagine that the little cat only the size of a palm could unleash the spatial assassination shadow to such a level. Normal half-step Void Kings probably wouldn't be able to dodge this dagger. Meng Shi's expression changed slightly as she felt a cold killing intent pierce through her soul, and her eyes started to hurt. Even though she was in the nightmare dimension, she wasn't willing to take this attack head-on. This was because the dagger was the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger, which was on par with the Qiankuan sword and the Sky-Locking Bow. The Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger was a combination of the Tao of Assassination and the Spatial Secret Technique. It could ignore defense to a certain degree, and even the Death Guard's Death Shadow body was defeated by it. Whoosh! Meng Shi could faintly feel her nightmare dimension being pierced by the dagger. Open! Meng Shi could only wave her long hair to block the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger. After all, she held the purple-scaled jade horn in one hand and controlled the Beast King. The other hand was used to restrict Nan Gongsheng. The power of the nightmare dimension increased dramatically, and the battle power of the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger was close to that of a king. The Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger was instantly drowned. Nan Gongsheng sighed in his heart. However, in the next instant, his heart skipped a beat as he realized something. Wait! Meng Shi exclaimed. She realized that the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger had disappeared into the nightmare dimension. An unfamiliar spatial aura seeped into his nightmare power. Puchi! The Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger appeared out of nowhere and pierced through one of Meng Shi's wrists. That was more accurate. The Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger appeared from Meng Shi's wrist before piercing through it. Spatial movement? Nan Gongsheng was surprised. With his spatial talents, he could see how the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger appeared. Arg! Meng Shi screamed as her wrist was pierced by the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger. What was even more coincidental was that, the purple-scaled jade horn, in her hand flew out. Damn it! Meng Shi's expression changed dramatically as she realized something. The purple-scaled jade horn. This was the item she used to control the Beast King. However, before she could save it, a dark silver line flashed by her side. Meow meow. A silver-gray kitten seemed to have been waiting for a long time. It appeared where it was and grabbed the purple-scaled jade horn. This scene caused the other two monarch geniuses to be dumbfounded. Stop! Mengshi shouted, a trace of shock, anger, and ruthlessness appearing on her dreamlike face. The purple-scaled jade horn was her biggest trump card in the demigod Forgotten Garden. With a beast king present, both Nan Gongsheng and the warm youth were wary of her. Stay! Mengshi circulated her nightmare bloodline to the maximum, and rays of dream light pierced through the little thieving cat's landing spot. However, the little thieving cat's agility and spatial techniques were incredible, and it dodged the rays of dream light in an unbelievable way. In terms of agility, no one could compare to the little thieving cat. Mengshi's expression became grim as she prepared to kill. Divine light of destruction. A dazzling beam of azure light that looked like countless tiny particles pierced through the nightmare dimension and struck Mengshi. That's... Mengshi's figure flashed. The nightmare dimension she had created was almost split in half by the divine light of destruction, and its power decreased dramatically. It's him. Mengshi raised her head and saw a transparent blue eye coldly looking down at her. Meow. The little thieving cat used this chance to merge into the darkness and disappear. Don't let it run. With Mengshi's talent in the soul, she could barely sense where the little thieving cat had gone. What was unexpected was, the little thieving cat didn't run out of the tomb. Meow meow. It gripped the purple-scaled jade horn and revealed a victorious smile. This smile was 70% cunning and 30% dirty. Not only did it not run, it just stood there. Nan Gongsheng and the warm youth paused. Although the little thieving cat was strong, it wasn't strong enough to fight against Mengshi. However, they understood in the next instant. Roar! A surge of magnificent power covered the little thieving cat's body. Shwa! The little thieving cat, under the effect of the magnificent power, was sucked into a purple-scaled horned beast. A beast king. The hearts of the three king geniuses shook. Meow meow. The little thieving cat gripped the purple-scaled jade horn and puffed out its chest as it sat proudly on the beast king. Its dancing appearance almost made Mengshi spit out a mouthful of blood. The beast king is being controlled by it. Nan Gongsheng and the warm youth were stunned. They didn't expect this to happen. Chapter 665. Demigod Forgotten Garden, Central Tomb, Meow Meow. The little thieving cat held the purple-scaled jade horn and grinned as it sat on the beast king, as if it had just won. You thieving cat, why aren't you giving the horn back to me? Mengshi trembled in anger, and her dreamy face was filled with anger and embarrassment. However, the little thieving cat had successfully controlled the beast king, so it didn't need to be scared of Mengshi anymore. It even made faces at this dreamy girl. Shwa! The eye of heaven in the sky revealed a mocking smile before disappearing. This Xiaofeng. The warm youth's heart dropped. He never would have thought that Xiaofeng, who seemed to have given up on the god blood, would appear and interfere with the fight between the three king geniuses. If the three king geniuses were balanced, then Xiaofeng wouldn't interfere. However, before the situation was broken, and Nan Gongsheng was at a disadvantage. Mengshi and the warm youth teamed up before Xiaofeng appeared. This way, even if Mengshi and I teamed up, we won't have the absolute advantage. Furthermore, the Beast King has already fallen into Xiaofeng's hands. Wen Luan's expression kept on changing. He could faintly feel that Xiaofeng was in control of the situation even though he wasn't involved. Whoosh! With a flash of golden light, the demigod's blood left Nan Gongsheng's control and headed toward the depths of the central tomb. Chase! Nan Gongsheng turned into a silver figure and chased after it. At this moment, the Beast King was controlled by the little thieving cat, so even if Nan Gongsheng wasn't a match for Mengshi and Wen Luan, he didn't need to fear anything. Meng Shi and Wen Luan looked at each other. Meng Shi obviously wanted to work together and take the purple-scaled jade horn. Wen Luan hesitated. Shua. A faintly discernible eye of void appeared above the little thieving cat's head once more, and it radiated a magnificent power. The expressions of the two changed dramatically. It was hard to imagine that the eye of void possessed king intent. With the help of the eye of space, it would be extremely difficult for the two to defeat the little thieving cat and the beast king and take the purple-scaled jade horn. Meow. The little thieving cat controlled the beast king and ignored them as it chased after the demigod's blood. Meng Shi and Wen Luan didn't act rashly, and their target was the demigod's blood. Not long after, they caught up to Nan Gongsheng. Buzz. Nan Gongsheng circulated his spatial technique and barely managed to control the demigod's blood. At this moment, the little thieving cat, Wen Luan, and Meng Shi all caught up. Without saying anything else, Wen Luan chased after Nan Gongsheng. Zhao Feng. Hurry up and help me. Nan Gongsheng exclaimed. He could determine the owner of the space transference eye. There seemed to be a response. Meow. The little thieving cat controlled the beast king to attack Meng Shi and Nan Gongsheng. Instantly, it was a chaotic battle on the field. The little thieving cat teamed up with Nan Gongsheng to deal with Meng Shi and Wen Luan. Putting aside who the demigod's blood belonged to, both sides had their own factions, so they had to work together to fight against the enemy. That Zhao Feng's space transference eye might attack at any moment. The warm youth's heart tightened as he communicated with Meng Shi. At this moment in time, Wen Luan had a feeling that his biggest enemy wasn't Nan Gongsheng but Zhao Feng. As the saying went, the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Zhao Feng wasn't actually involved, and his space transference eye could attack at any moment. Maybe Zhao Feng's battle power wasn't comparable to the three king geniuses, but he was outside of the game and could control everything. But we can't give up on the demigod's blood so easily. How could Meng Shi not know this? Once Nan Gongsheng obtained the demigod's blood, it would be extremely easy for him to become a true king. The three king geniuses were in a stalemate for the demigod's blood. At this moment in time, Zhao Feng was sitting in the library and peacefully reading a book. Not bad, not bad. One drop of the demigod's blood is enough to stall three king geniuses. A smile formed on Zhao Feng's face. Zhao Feng knew that half of the victory belonged to him now that he had successfully obtained control of the Beast King. Back when he left the mental cultivation palace, Zhao Feng already had a plan, and the core of it was to obtain the purple Qilin jade horn. After all, it was hard for Zhao Feng to fight against the three king geniuses head-on, and he was indeed weaker than them by half a level. However, after obtaining the purple Qilin jade horn, the situation started to favor Zhao Feng. He was no longer afraid of fighting against the three king geniuses head-on. Shua! 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 Zhao Feng quickly flipped through the books. Since he had enough time, he focused on reading the contents. For some reason, Zhao Feng had the feeling that these books had a spirit of their own, as if they contained a wisp of profound mental energy. I'll be able to finish reading all the books in the library in a day or two. Zhao Feng was filled with anticipation. He soon finished the limit of 50 books per day. Most of Zhao Feng's attention was placed on the central tomb. The three king geniuses and the little thieving cat were locked in battle. In a short amount of time, any one of the four sides would find it hard to control the demigod's blood and take it away. One day later, the demigod's blood brought everyone to the depths of the central tomb. There was a strong yin ghost qi in the central tomb, and powerful wraiths would appear from time to time. Many of these wraiths had been kings when they were alive. Even though most of their power had disappeared after turning into wraiths, they were still able to cause some trouble for the three king geniuses. What was even more terrifying was that a small number of king wraiths had turned into wraiths ghost kings. Luckily, These wraiths were afraid of the demigod's blood and didn't dare to get too close. Otherwise, if a few vengeful spirit ghost kings pounced on them, coupled with a large number of powerful vengeful spirits, it might bring disaster to them. Meow meow. The little thieving cat controlled the king beast and bit the demigod's blood. Following the demigod's blood in the central tomb would lower the threat of the forbidden ground by 70%. As expected of the forbidden ground of the demigod Forgotten Garden. Anyone below the void god realm will die if they enter. Even kings won't be able to escape unscathed. Zhao Feng felt his hairs stand on end through the little thieving cat's senses. The three king geniuses also felt a chill down their spines. However, they didn't have any path of retreat. Following the demigod's blood was the safest option, and it also represented the biggest reward. Nan Gongsheng, I have a suggestion. Meng Shi suddenly spoke. What suggestion? Nan Gongsheng said emotionlessly. Now that he had the little thieving cat's help, he wasn't scared of Meng Shi and Wen Luoan teaming up at all. Let's team up and take the demigod's blood out of the central tomb. At that time, we can discuss how to split the demigod's blood. Meng Shi suggested. Nan Gongsheng was slightly moved when he heard that. This central mausoleum was too sinister and terrifying. He did not know what sort of taboos and dangers lay within. But who's going to take care of the demigod's blood? Nan Gongsheng said. At this moment in time, the two groups worked together to control the demigod's blood. However, there were powerful wraiths and wraiths ghost kings in the passages of the tomb. Everyone would be attacked and wouldn't be able to stand together. Facing the charge of the wraiths, everyone had to try and dodge. Meow meow. The little thieving cat immediately waved its paws and volunteered, as if it was making a promise. Nan Gongsheng revealed a weird expression. No. The warm youth immediately rejected it. The little thieving cat had Zhao Feng behind it, and the eye of heaven couldn't be defended against. At this moment in time, the four of them started to disagree. If one of them took care of the demigod's blood, the other three wouldn't be at ease. Right at this moment, Shua. An eye of nothingness floated above their heads. The hearts of the three king geniuses shook. The warm youth and Meng Shi gritted their teeth in anger. Junior Marshal Brother Zhao, what do you think? Nan Gongsheng asked. They all looked up at the eye of transference with complicated expressions. Although Zhao Feng's battle power wasn't as strong as the strongest king geniuses, he was able to control the situation. Very simple. You can try to split the demigod's blood into 4. That's fair. A voice came from the eye of transference above his head. An aura of a king's magnificent power enveloped the area. Split into 4. Everyone's eyebrows furrowed. It wasn't that they hadn't thought about this before. However, the power contained within the demigod's blood was too terrifying. Firstly, the feasibility of splitting the god's blood into 4 was questionable. The god's blood was one drop, but it was one entity. Furthermore, the god's blood had its own consciousness. If they forcefully split the god's blood and caused it to explode, the power would be enough to kill a king. Hee, if I forcefully split the god's blood will struggle and wear away its consciousness. When the god's blood's resistance is at its weakest, I might be able to take it away with my spatial movement. Zhao Feng had his own plans. The others were doubtful, but they decided to give it a try. Meow meow. The little thieving cat threw the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger into the air, and it floated above the demigod's blood. Work together and merge your power into the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger to split the god's blood. Zhao Feng suggested. The three king geniuses faintly nodded their heads. The Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger was a sacred weapon of the Tao of assassination, and it could ignore defense to a certain degree. When with the little thieving cat as the center, the three king geniuses poured their power into the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger. However, the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger changed before it even slashed down. When the demigod's blood struggled in fear and released a bright flame that could make any king's expression change. Bam! 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 Nan Gongsheng, Meng Shi, Wen Luan, and the Beast King were all sent flying. Among them, blood leaked out of Meng Shi's mouth as she glared at Zhao Feng with a cold expression. Their gazes toward Zhao Feng were unfriendly. If it wasn't for the fact that there was only an eye above their heads, they might have attacked Zhao Feng at the same time to vent their anger. It's a misunderstanding. Zhao Feng smiled. The demigod's blood was like a living being, it could feel fear. Even a cornered dog would jump over a wall. The demigod's blood would also have the determination to die together when it was being killed. Zhao Feng's suggestion to split them up had failed. Wen Luan felt like he had been tricked. Splitting the demigod's blood? This was a trap. It was easy to talk while standing there. When the demigod's blood pushed away the four king geniuses, and its aura dimmed as it headed deeper into the tomb. Chase after it. They didn't have time to question Zhao Feng as they chased after the demigod's blood. The aura of the demigod's blood has dropped. Its consciousness will be worn away in 2 more days, and it will lose all resistance. Zhao Feng's eye of heaven disappeared from the air. His mental energy returned to the book room. There's only a few dozen books left. Zhao Feng reached out and found that the books didn't have any resistance. The limit of 2 to 3 days seemed to have decreased. He didn't think too much about it. In one breath, he finished reading the remaining dozens of books in the study room. Chapter 666. At this point in time, Zhao Feng finished reading all the books in the hidden book room. In his mind, the contents of the books were extremely clear. Zhao Feng was truly interested in the knowledge in the books and finished reading them from beginning to end. This was the first outsider genius to complete this record in the history of the demigod Forgotten Garden. Zhao Feng slowly closed his eyes. He felt as if the contents of the books contained a hidden mental energy power. All the knowledge in the books merged into one. Suddenly, inside the study, all the books glowed faintly and began to burn. Zhao Feng's heart jumped. He had a feeling that these books weren't simple, and there might be some changes after reading them all. Whoosh! In an instant, the books in the library began to burn in the dim light, turning transparent bit by bit. This is... Zhao Feng was wary and didn't dare to do anything rash. After all, this was the demigod Forgotten Garden. Nothing could be measured using normal means. After a few breaths later, the books finished burning and merged into a transparent light that resonated with the knowledge in Zhao Feng's mind. Shwa! The transparent light disappeared and merged with the contents of the books in Zhao Feng's mind. Junior, I am the demigod Kuan Yun. You're very lucky to have passed the demigod's test. An arrogant voice sounded in Zhao Feng's mind. In his mind, a transparent light radiated a mysterious power that made Zhao Feng's consciousness feel pressured. Demigod Kuan Yun. Zhao Feng inspected the transparent light. If it was an ordinary genius that encountered such a fortuitous encounter, that genius would definitely be overwhelmed by the unexpected favor and be filled with fear and trepidation. After all, this transparent light was very likely a mental energy inheritance left behind by a demigod. However, Zhao Feng wasn't a newbie. He had fought with the Purple Saint Partial Soul back in the Purple Saint ruins. The Purple Knight Sacred Lord was a mystic light realm sacred lord, and the demigod Forgotten Garden was a demigod that had half a foot into the heavenly divine realm. Sir, are you really the owner of the Forgotten Garden, the legendary demigod? Zhao Feng asked. Insolent junior. How dare you doubt my identity? I am the remnant consciousness left behind by the demigod Kuan Yun. The faint light's voice deepened, as if it was slightly angry. In an instant. In the soul dimension, a terrifying psychic aura showed signs of collapsing the sky and splitting the earth. If it was an ordinary person, they would have peed their pants in fear and immediately kowtowed. Zhao Feng's expression did not change, but he pretended to be uneasy. Junior. If you're sincere and listen to my teachings, you'll have a chance to obtain a demigod's inheritance in the future. The entire demigod Forgotten Garden will be inherited by you. The voice slowed down a little, sounding somewhat aloof. Demigod inheritance? Inherit the entire demigod Forgotten Garden? Zhao Feng's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. Junior, are you willing to be a disciple of me, the demigod Kuan Yun? The faint, transparent light had a kind of arrogant confidence that looked down on the world. However, Zhao Feng snickered coldly after hearing these promises. A mere wisp of remnant consciousness dares to call itself a demigod. Hearing this, the transparent light couldn't help but shudder. Junior, do you believe that I can destroy your soul with just one thought? The faint, transparent light snickered coldly. In the next instant, in the soul dimension, the scene of heaven and earth collapsing appeared. Hee, you're just a wisp of remnant consciousness in the end. You tried to imitate the aura of a demigod, but you ended up like a dog. Zhao Feng laughed mockingly. He had a calm expression and didn't fear the powerful aura in the soul dimension. If it were a genius below the void god realm, they would most likely be tricked and worship the aura of a demigod. However, Zhao Feng was a genius that specialized in Soul Dao I bloodline techniques. These illusions couldn't fool him. His understanding of the Tao of the soul had already reached a profound level. As soon as the faint, transparent light appeared, Zhao Feng could tell that it was just a wisp of remnant consciousness. There was a difference between a remnant thought and a remnant soul. The purple saint partial spirit was a type of remnant soul, and it was much more complete than a remnant thought. A remnant thought was just a thought. A higher-level remnant thought would contain some of its owner's memories. Therefore, Zhao Feng wasn't scared of this demigod remnant thought. Junior, you're courting death. The demigod remnant thought became angry, but its voice was filled with fear. Humph. My martial ancestor is a mystic light realm sacred lord. You think you can trick me with just this? Zhao Feng snickered coldly. The next instant, the terrifying eye bloodline aura from the god's spiritual eye crushed over and crushed the illusion created by the demigod remnant thought. Junior, stop right now. You win. The faint, transparent light became even dimmer under the pressure of Zhao Feng's god's spiritual eye. It was like a candle in the wind. The demigod remnant thought cursed in its heart. The human it was in specialized in the Tao of the soul, and his eye bloodline was extremely strong. The origin of his eye bloodline probably wasn't simple. Furthermore, the martial ancestor of a mystic light realm sacred lord that Zhao Feng mentioned made it feel guilty. Zhao Feng snickered coldly and retracted the eye bloodline aura of the god's spiritual eye. If it weren't for the fact that he specialized in the Tao of the soul and had the god's spiritual eye, he might have been tricked by the demigod remnant thought. Luckily, Zhao Feng was calm enough to see through the demigod remnant thought's facade. Demigod remnant thought, what's your purpose in living here? How much do you know about the demigod Forgotten Garden? Zhao Feng started to interrogate it. The demigod remnant thought was angry and humiliated, but there was nothing it could do. It originally wanted to use this human genius to threaten him, but it ended up being captured instead. The demigod master's soul was destroyed by the god tribulation long ago, and only a few remnant thoughts were left in the corners of the demigod Forgotten Garden. I'm one of them. The demigod remnant thought didn't dare to hide anything. This youth was calm and had a strong soul eye bloodline technique. He also had a mystic light realm elder behind him, so he couldn't hide his lies for long. A while later, Zhao Feng understood what had happened. After a demigod died, almost all of their souls were destroyed, and only some remnant thoughts were left behind. This demigod remnant thought was stored in the hidden room. This was because the demigod often stayed in the hidden room when he was alive, and his memories and remnant thoughts were formed here. After reading all the books in the hidden room, Zhao Feng activated the demigod remnant thought that had almost been destroyed. After understanding the truth, Zhao Feng couldn't help but feel slightly disappointed. This demigod remnant thought didn't seem to be very useful and had no control over the demigod Forgotten Garden. Junior. Don't underestimate me. As a demigod remnant thought, I know Master and the demigod Forgotten Garden very well. Most importantly, there's a small chance that I can recover my demigod true body. The demigod remnant thought quickly said. It was extremely weak right now, and it was worried that Zhao Feng wouldn't be able to use it anymore. Recover your demigod true body. Zhao Feng was slightly surprised when he heard that. After all, what appeared in front of him was only a demigod remnant thought. The purple Saint Partial Spirit's soul state was slightly more complete, but it couldn't return to its original body. As long as I can obtain the demigod's blood, there's a chance for me to revive from a single drop of blood. The demigod remnant thought said proudly. Revive from a single drop of blood? Zhao Feng had heard of this legendary ability before, and the books in the hidden room had information about it. In theory, with a drop of the demigod's blood and the demigod remnant thought, one could indeed revive from a single drop of blood, but the chance of returning to the peak demigod level was extremely low. Hehe, you actually know about the demigod's blood? But even if I obtain the demigod's blood, I'll still use it to increase my strength. Zhao Feng snickered. This was because the demigod remnant thought understood some information when he used it to read the books. You're wasting God's gift. Once you succeed in reviving from a single drop of blood, you'll be able to activate more of the demigod's abilities, including his inherited memories. The demigod remnant thought said angrily. Zhao Feng didn't reply and started to think. Without a doubt, the value of reviving a demigod from a single drop of blood was far greater than a single drop of the demigod's blood. Simply put, it was a demigod revival plan. However, there was a certain amount of risk involved. Zhao Feng wasn't sure what to do. Furthermore, he hadn't even gotten the demigod's blood yet. Just stay here. Zhao Feng's consciousness retracted from his mind. Wait. The demigod remnant thought exclaimed, I'm just a wisp of remnant thought, and it's already incredible that I can reform. If you don't do anything, I'll only be able to live for a few more days. In his mind, the faint light was extremely dim, as if it could dissipate at any moment. Zhao Feng thought for a while and circulated a wisp of water to carefully cover the demigod remnant thought. Zhao Feng's eye bloodline power was of the water element, and it had the ability to heal. Under the nourishment of the watery eye power, the ball of faint light stabilized a little. Next, Zhao Feng took out a dark green gourd. Green spiritual gourd. The demigod remnant thought was overjoyed and entered the green spiritual gourd. The green spiritual gourd was more suitable for soul remnant thoughts, and it could even nourish them. Legends said that some King Martial Emperor's soul remnant intents were stored in the green spiritual gourd and were reborn many years later. The demigod remnant thought stayed in Zhao Feng's mind, and it wasn't impossible with the nourishment of the water. However, if Zhao Feng circulated his eye bloodline power on a large scale or was attacked by the soul, it would affect the demigod remnant thought. I still have mermaid tears, soul-gathering spirit grass, and other soul Dao treasures here. Zhao Feng said. Mermaid tears. Soul-gathering spirit grass. Quick, this can help consolidate my soul remnant thought and even form a soul remnant. The demigod remnant thought was impatient. There's no free lunch in this world. You can't help me at all right now, so why should I help you? Unless. Zhao Feng said. Unless you become my master. Zhao Feng's face didn't turn red, and his heart didn't jump. Become your master? That's impossible. The demigod remnant thought's roar sounded from within the gourd. Then you can stay here forever. Even if you obtain the demigod's blood, you won't be able to be reborn. Zhao Feng said. After saying this, he got up and prepared to leave the library. As soon as he stepped out of the library, human, you win. The demigod remnant thought's voice seemed to be filled with helplessness as he gritted his teeth. Zhao Feng nodded his head in satisfaction and placed a small mermaid tear into the green spiritual gourd. The demigod remnant thought absorbed the power of the mermaid tear hungrily. In just an instant, the aura of the demigod remnant thought became purer, and the undulation of soul power became stronger. Master, how confident are you in obtaining the demigod's blood? The demigod remnant thought asked after absorbing the mermaid tear. Hard to say. The demigod's blood has entered the central tomb of the messy graveyard. Zhao Feng wasn't sure. The central tomb. You mean, the demigod tomb? The demigod remnant thought was stunned. Chapter 667. Demigod Tomb. Only now did Zhao Feng know the name of the tomb. It was obvious that this was where the demigod was buried. The demigod partial thought indeed knew more about the situation in the demigod Forgotten Garden. Danger and fortune exist together. The demigod's corpse is buried in the demigod tomb. Although there's no life force in it, it can't be revived. The demigod partial thought said mysteriously. Zhao Feng knew that the demigod's death was mainly due to the god tribulation. If they died to the god tribulation, it was already a miracle that their corpse wasn't destroyed. What do you know about the demigod tomb? Zhao Feng asked. If he was familiar with the demigod tomb, then Zhao Feng's plan and the little thieving cat's actions would be more effective. Because I ate the mermaid tear, I recovered some of my memories. I know a bit about the map of the demigod tomb. The demigod partial thought soon sent some information to Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng nodded his head and gave the demigod partial thought another mermaid tear as a reward. Zhao Feng's eyebrows furrowed after reading through the information. From the looks of it, apart from some vengeful spirits and some puppets guarding the tomb, there wasn't any fortune in the demigod tomb. Zhao Feng's expression suddenly changed as he was about to speak. His attention was attracted by the situation in the demigod tomb. Within the passage of the tomb, Wu Boom. A scarlet-purple vengeful spirit that was dozens of feet tall appeared in the form of a valiant man. Flames surged around it as it stood proudly in the air. Its terrifying aura was almost tangible as it crushed down on the void. An emperor vengeful spirit. The expressions of Nan Gongsheng, Meng Shi, and company changed dramatically. Run. This emperor-level vengeful spirit isn't something we can deal with. Wen Luoan revealed a look of panic for the first time. The figure of the male vengeful spirit gave off the aura of an emperor, and it made their souls tremble. Whoosh! The demigod's blood used this chance to enter the depths of the tomb. At this moment, Nan Gongsheng, Meng Shi, Wen Luoan, and the little thieving cat faced a life-and-death situation. Shua! A transparent blue eye of nothingness appeared above the little thieving cat's head. Zhao Feng had already made his preparations. If it was really dangerous, he would use spatial movement to save the little thieving cat. After being together for a long time, the relationship between Zhao Feng and the little thieving cat surpassed that of normal pets. Even if I give up on the demigod's blood, I can't let the little thieving cat fall into a life-and-death situation. Zhao Feng made up his mind. He also gave the map of the demigod tomb to the little thieving cat. Meow. When the little thieving cat received the information, it grinned and grabbed the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger and the purple-scaled jade horn before burrowing into the Beast King's body. In this way, most of the pressure was resisted by the King Beast and protected by the King's magnificent power. It could be said that the little thieving cat was the safest of the group. Boom, the emperor-level vengeful spirit flew over. The geniuses' hearts and souls shook, and their blood and qi churned as they endured the invisible pressure. Even the Beast King seemed to be struggling and slowed down. Meow, meow. The little thieving cat grinned and controlled the Beast King to burrow toward an ancient totem on the wall. Smash into a wall. Nan Gongsheng and company thought that the little thieving cat had gone crazy from fear when they saw its actions. However, the next scene made their jaws drop. Crack! The ancient totem on the wall suddenly opened a secret passage, and the Beast King that the little thieving cat was in entered. Follow. Nan Gongsheng and company didn't care about the demigod's blood anymore. Even if the three of them teamed up, they still wouldn't be able to fight against an emperor-level vengeful spirit. Boom! The emperor-level vengeful spirit smashed into the passage, but due to its size, it was bounced back. The materials used to construct the demigod tomb were extremely unique. Even normal vengeful spirits would find it hard to pass through the wall. Even then, the terrifying magnificent power passed through the physical world and injured Nan Gongsheng and company behind him. The little thieving cat was at the very front, and it was hidden inside the Beast King, so it wasn't affected. Nan Gongsheng and company let out a long breath. The emperor-level vengeful spirit didn't chase after them. Meow meow. The little thieving cat returned to the Beast King and led the way with its head held high. How does this cat know the layout of the tomb so well? Meng Shi and Wen Luan looked at each other. Follow the cat closely. The hearts of the three shook. They had lost their way in the forbidden area of the tomb, and their lives were closely tied to this cat. The little thieving cat controlled the Beast King to take many turns in the passage. At a certain moment, the Beast King leaped out of the secret passage and entered an even darker underground chamber. The underground chamber was scorched black. After tens of thousands of years, this place still gave off an aura that made all gods and demons fear. There wasn't a single vengeful spirit within 100 yards of the underground chamber, not even an emperor-level vengeful spirit. The chamber was empty except for a charred corpse that was as black as ink. The corpse didn't look like a human anymore. It was like a pile of black charcoal, and it even had some luster to it. That's... The three king geniuses stared at the charred corpse and felt a forbidden aura that could shake the heavens. That forbidden aura, even if there was only a trace left, was enough to make all gods and ghosts tremble in fear. It was an instinctive fear. Pressure. The three king geniuses couldn't even breathe. The Beast King's eyes were filled with fear as it trembled in front of the scorched corpse. This corpse doesn't have any aura of life, soul power, or true yuan, but it's still able to radiate such a terrifying aura. The chamber was dead silent. Even the outside of the chamber was dead silent. No vengeful spirits approached. This corpse might very well be the body of a demigod. This forbidden aura obviously doesn't come from the corpse itself. The eyes of the three king geniuses twinkled as they guessed. Shua. The eye of emptiness appeared in the chamber. Zhao Feng felt a forbidden aura penetrate his body. The source of this aura seemed to be the bane of all things in the universe. The body of a demigod has been completely destroyed. This aura doesn't come from the upper body. Zhao Feng's heart shook. He was unable to block the pressure from the forbidden aura even though he had traveled through space. That's the power of the god tribulation. The demigod partial thought's voice suddenly sounded. The power of the god tribulation. Zhao Feng's heart shook. No wonder the body of a demigod didn't even look like a human. It had almost fallen apart and didn't have any aura of life. The demigod's true body died to the god tribulation, and the coffin wasn't even set up properly. The demigod partial thought's voice was slightly sorrowful. After all, it was a partial thought that came from the demigod's soul consciousness. This body has been completely destroyed, so it doesn't have much value. However, the remaining power of the god tribulation is the most valuable thing. It'll help you cultivate the power of lightning within your body. The demigod partial thought said. The power of the god tribulation. Zhao Feng's heart jumped. The power of the god tribulation could even kill a demigod and make even gods fear it. From this, one could see how valuable this power was. Most likely, even some mystic light realm sacred lords and demigods would be interested in the remnant power of god tribulation in the corpse. Normal mystic light realm sacred lords would most likely be killed by the god tribulation when trying to break through to the heavenly divine realm. However, the demigod's true body used his body to absorb a large amount of the god tribulation's power, and his body wasn't destroyed. From this, one could see that his strength was only a sliver away from the heavenly divine realm. The demigod partial thought sighed. At this point, Zhao Feng understood even more just how precious these bodies that had absorbed God tribulation energy were. Experts that could break through to the heavenly divine realm were extremely rare. Experts that could survive the God tribulation and not destroy their bodies were even less than 1 in 10. From a certain perspective, this body that had endured the God tribulation might be the most valuable treasure in the demigod Forgotten Garden. Even the demigod's blood might not be as valuable as the God tribulation's body. This was because the demigod's blood wasn't very useful to those at the mystic light realm. On the other hand, the God tribulation's body was extremely valuable even to mystic light realm sacred lords and demigods. The power of the God tribulation is mostly based on divine lightning, so this God tribulation's body is very useful to me. Zhao Feng was extremely excited. Meow. The little thieving cat sat on the Beast King and gripped the Shadow Kill Imperial dagger as it slowly approached the black corpse. Nan Gongsheng and company weren't dumb, they could guess where this body came from. After all, it wasn't a big secret that the demigod had died to the God tribulation. The body is big anyway. Let's split it together. Zhao Feng said. It was extremely difficult to split the God tribulation's body with just one person's strength. Even kings would be suppressed by the God tribulation corpse with every move. Sure. The 3 king geniuses didn't object. The 4 discussed and decided to use the little thieving cat's Shadow Kill Imperial dagger as the core to cut the black corpse. When the Shadow Kill Imperial dagger gathered energy from all directions and turned into a sharp blade that was as cold as winter as it slashed at the charred corpse. Ding! When the Shadow Kill Imperial dagger slashed onto the black corpse, its power was weakened by more than 90% by the God tribulation's power. On the charred black corpse, there was only a tiny trace that could not be detected. The expressions of the 3 king geniuses were slightly ugly. If this continued, it would probably take a day or 2 to split the black corpse. However, thinking about the value of the God tribulation's body, the 3 king geniuses didn't retreat. Putting aside a day or 2, it was worth it even if it took a month or 2. Ding! Ding! The 4 of them would team up and use the Shadow Kill Imperial dagger to slash at the black corpse every 4 to 5 breaths. The combined power of the Shadow Kill Imperial dagger was enough to kill weaker kings. Shwa! Zhao Feng's Eye of Heaven disappeared from the tomb. However, the Eye of Heaven didn't disappear from the demigod tomb. Soon later, Zhao Feng's Eye of Heaven found where the demigod's blood was hiding. The consciousness of the demigod's blood was extremely weak, but it suddenly sensed the existence of the Eye of Heaven and released a golden light. Get ready to collect the god blood. Zhao Feng said to the demigod partial thought. Spatial movement. A ripple of eye bloodline power covered the demigod's blood, and the outline of a whirlpool appeared. When the demigod's blood started to struggle, but it suddenly stopped. This was because a familiar mental energy aura appeared from the ripple of eye bloodline power. Shwa! The god blood with a golden luster was swallowed by the outline of the vortex and disappeared. The demigod's blood has been obtained. The Eye of Heaven revealed a look of joy as it disappeared. Chapter 668. Demigod Forgotten Garden, Book Room. A faint smile appeared on Zhao Feng's face. Kuan Yun partial thought, you're not completely useless. Kuan Yun partial thought was the name Zhao Feng gave the demigod partial thought. This was because the owner of the demigod Forgotten Garden was called Kuan Yun. Within the dimension of his left eye, a faint golden drop of blood floated in the pitch-black area. It was the demigod's blood essence. Obtaining the demigod's blood was easier than he had imagined. The god's blood had its own consciousness, and it respected the mental energy aura of the demigod's owner. The Kuan Yun partial thought was split off from the demigod's destroyed soul, so it obviously had the aura of a demigod. The Kuan Yun partial thought had the urge to spit out blood when it heard Zhao Feng say that it was completely useless. The demigod partial thought was completely useless in Zhao Feng's eyes? Although the Kun-yun partial thought was far from a partial soul, it still had its own thoughts and a small portion of its memories. Master, now that you've obtained the demigod's blood, I can be reborn from a single drop of blood. The Kun-yun partial thought said expectantly. When one reached the demigod level, they could be reborn from a single drop of blood even if their physical body was destroyed. Of course, the prerequisite was that at least a wisp of mental energy remained. And now, the Kun-yun partial thought and the demigod's blood obviously fulfilled this condition. The demigod's blood was blood essence. The Kun-yun partial thought wasn't a normal wisp of mental energy either. It had its own thoughts and memories, and it was close to the level of a partial soul. Rebirth from a single drop of blood is a heaven-defying technique of the legends. Zhao Feng also looked forward to it. However, this matter was very important, so he wouldn't do it easily. Firstly, the power contained within the demigod's blood was too terrifying. Who could predict how much the demigod Kun-yun's strength would increase after being reborn from a single drop of blood? We'll discuss this after we leave the demigod Forgotten Garden. Zhao Feng answered. An idea quickly formed in his mind. One thing was certain. Zhao Feng wouldn't use all the power of the demigod's blood on rebirth. He was going to use the power of the divine blood as well. Not only could he strengthen himself, but he could also weaken the power of the demigod Kun-yun after his rebirth. The demigod Forgotten Garden will close in 2.5 days. Zhao Feng pondered. For the rest of the time, Zhao Feng's focus was no longer on the plan for rare materials and treasures. Death pursuit. It's still unknown who will emerge victorious. Zhao Feng's expression was cold as he stared in the direction of the demigod's tomb. At the same time, in the chamber of the demigod's tomb, the three king geniuses and the little thieving cat teamed up to cut the charred black corpse. Wen Luan suddenly felt a chill. The legendary bloodline of the 10,000 ancient races gave him a sharp sense of danger. Whoosh! The eye of the void was faintly discernible in the tomb, revealing a faint smile. The three king geniuses were used to the existence of the eye of heaven. However, the expression of the space transference eye made them feel as if they had fallen into a passive state. The three of them probably wouldn't have thought that Zhao Feng would successfully obtain the demigod's blood. Zhao Feng would try his best to hide the fact that he had obtained the demigod's blood, and he would also start the demigod revival plan. If the world knew about this secret, the entire true martial sacred land would be shaken. Reviving a demigod was a bold and terrifying idea. I only want the head of the demigod's body. The eye of heaven floated in the air and said in an emotionless tone. The reason why he wanted the head was because when the demigod fought against the god Tribulation, the head would be hit the most. Zhao Feng had obtained this information from the Kun-yun partial thought. Why do you have priority? Meng Shi snickered coldly. These people didn't think too much about it. Meng Shi was purely dissatisfied with Zhao Feng's hostility. It was this man who had stolen the trump card that her master had prepared for her. Through this trump card, Zhao Feng had turned the tables and reached a level comparable to the three king geniuses. Without the little thieving cat's guidance, you wouldn't have been able to safely enter this place. Furthermore, I've read all the books in the library and know more about the demigod's tomb than you do. Zhao Feng said confidently. Demigod's tomb. The three king geniuses looked at each other. From all the signs, it seemed that Zhao Feng did indeed know more about the central tomb and the entire demigod Forgotten Garden. Furthermore, Zhao Feng had actually finished reading all the books in the hidden library. It sounded rather idiotic, but it made sense that Zhao Feng would be touched by some sort of fortune. It's just a head. Nan Gongsheng shrugged his shoulders. He was on the same side as Zhao Feng right now. Finally, the three king geniuses allowed Zhao Feng to choose the demigod's head first. But Zhao Feng, since you know the demigod's tomb, you need to take us out of here safely. Meng Shi requested. Everyone had lost their way in the depths of the demigod's tomb. It would be extremely dangerous to leave the demigod Forgotten Garden after splitting the corpse. That's right. The eye of heaven revealed a faint smile. Zhao Feng snickered coldly in his heart. In reality, as long as he held the parts of the demigod's corpse, the aura of the demigod's power would be enough to force back all the vengeful spirits in the tomb. However, the three king geniuses were focused on splitting the corpse and didn't think about this. Time passed by quickly. 1 or 2 days passed by quickly. The demigod's corpse was split up. Zhao Feng chose the demigod's head and had the little thieving cat take it. Wen Luan took the legs. Meng Shi took the arms. The torso was taken by Nan Gongsheng. The demigod Forgotten Garden will close in 1 day. Nan Gongsheng said. The last day. Wen Luan and Meng Shi looked at each other. We just need to hold the parts of the demigod's corpse to force back the vengeful spirits in the tomb. Wen Luan messaged. At this moment in time, the three king geniuses all thought of this after obtaining the parts of the demigod's corpse. Once they had this method, the three king geniuses wouldn't rely too much on Zhao Feng's knowledge of the demigod's tomb. Meow. The little thieving cat sat on the beast king and set off first. Follow. Meng Shi and Wen Luan followed the little thieving cat. Nan Gongsheng thought for a while and followed closely behind. Suddenly, the little thieving cat became the leader of the group. Since Zhao Feng has information about the demigod's tomb, he definitely won't give up on the demigod's blood. Furthermore, Zhao Feng's Eye of Heaven has a huge advantage in terms of senses. He might have found the location of the demigod's blood already. The three king geniuses all had their own plans. All in all, they had to follow the little thieving cat. Meow. The little thieving cat glanced at the three king geniuses with a playful and mocking expression. However, under Zhao Feng's orders, the little thieving cat still had to search the demigod's tomb. Schwa. The Eye of Heaven would occasionally appear, as if it was cooperating with the little thieving cat's search. The little thieving cat tried to escape the three king geniuses, but it failed. Zhao Feng, did you find the demigod's blood or not? Nan Gongsheng messaged. The demigod's tomb is too complicated. The demigod's blood is too small, and I don't know where it's hiding. Zhao Feng replied. Although he said that, Zhao Feng still told the little thieving cat to search for the demigod's blood as if it was determined to find it. Although Meng Shi and Wen Luan were suspicious, they didn't expect Zhao Feng to find the demigod's blood so easily. They obviously met some vengeful spirits in the process. However, once they took out the parts of the demigod's corpse, they would be able to scare away all kinds of vengeful spirits. However, there were exceptions. Although some emperor vengeful spirits were wary of the demigod's corpse and wouldn't approach it, they would use their power to attack from afar. The three king geniuses fought against the emperor vengeful spirits and were in a ruffled state. They continued to search while running away. Unknowingly, the little thieving cat brought them to the entrance of the tomb. Meow meow. The little thieving cat sat on the beast king and left the demigod's tomb with a dejected expression. The three king geniuses could only give up on the demigod's blood with disappointment and helplessness. The demigod's blood was too small. Once they lost track of it, it would be like finding a needle in a haystack. Furthermore, the demigod's tomb was extremely dangerous. If it weren't for the parts of the demigod's corpse, the three king geniuses might have already died. At the entrance of the tomb, Wen Luan's eyes twinkled coldly as he looked in the direction the little thieving cat left. The warm youth and Meng Shi stood together and started to talk in secret. No problem, I'll help you deal with that brat. A cold light appeared on Meng Shi's beautiful face. She was extremely hostile towards Zhao Feng, both in private and in public. In private, Meng Shi hated Zhao Feng for stealing the purple scale jade horn. In public, Zhao Feng was a rising bloodline genius of the mystic true sacred clan, and he was a dark horse in the demigod Forgotten Garden. From dominating the purple smoke lake to coming here, taking the sky-locking bow, and finally fighting against the three king geniuses. All of this proved how terrifying this genius was. Of course. She didn't know that Zhao Feng had obtained the demigod's blood. Otherwise, that wouldn't be the evaluation of a dark horse, but the biggest winner. I can sense where that brat is. Even if there's only 1 day left, it's enough to kill him. Wen Luo'an's warm smile contained a hint of coldness. Just as the two were planning their next move, meow. The little thieving cat suddenly stopped on the purple-scaled beast, and its eyes became cold and dignified. Boom! The king beast gave off a majestic aura that pressed down on the warm young man. The heart of the warm youth jumped. Roar the Beast King charged toward the warm youth. This Beast King only had 70% of its battle power, so the warm youth obviously wasn't scared. However, in the next instant, his expression changed dramatically. Soul Lock. A translucent blue eye of nothingness floated above the two's heads. Wen Luo'an's body froze. Wisps of transparent purple lightning bound his soul. This was a control-type Soul Eye bloodline technique that Zhao Feng had created using the Dark Eye secret technique as the foundation. Soul Lock targeted the target's soul. Open. When Luo'an's Heaven-Sun Battle Race bloodline was activated, and a golden light radiated from his body, making him seem like a golden god of war. However, in the Eye of Heaven state, Zhao Feng had king intent, and his Soul Lock was able to restrict anyone below the Void God realm. When Luo'an struggled, and the purple lightning chains binding his soul started to shake, but they weren't broken in a short amount of time. Nightmare Dimension. Meng Shi obviously wouldn't just stand there and watch. She used her soul bloodline to try and break free from Zhao Feng's soul lock. However, right at this moment, Shua. A profound silver phantom, accompanied by a wisp of spatial fluctuation, swept to the side of the sunny youth. Nan Gongsheng. When Luo'an and Meng Shi's expressions changed dramatically. Mystic Spatial Rend. Nan Gongsheng's expression was cold as he slashed a silver streak of light toward the warm youth. Chapter 669. In a short instant, the series of changes caught the warm youth and Meng Shi off guard, and they exclaimed in shock. The Beast King, the Eye of Heaven, and Nan Gongsheng attacked Wen Luo'an at almost the same time. Just a moment ago, the warm youth and Meng Shi were discussing how to kill Zhao Feng. The Eye of Transference in the air revealed a mocking smile. How could Zhao Feng not guess the hostility and killing intent the warm youth and Meng Shi had for him? Being on the defensive wasn't Zhao Feng's style. The biggest advantage the god's spiritual eye gave him was his control. The Eye of Heaven restricted the three king geniuses, while Zhao Feng was on a higher level. The one who attacked first had the advantage, and the one who attacked later would suffer. Zhao Feng wasn't stupid enough to wait for the warm youth and Meng Shi to attack him. Before leaving the tomb, Zhao Feng had successfully convinced Nan Gongsheng to help him. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. The warm youth was restricted by Zhao Feng's soul shackle. The Beast King and Nan Gongsheng's attacks arrived at the same time. Crack! Nan Gongsheng's mystic spatial rend landed on the warm youth's neck. A crack appeared on the warm youth's golden skin, and blood started to seep out. Crack! Boom! The Beast King charged toward Wen Luo'an, but it was stopped by Meng Shi. Only a few shockwaves landed on the warm youth. The first round of attacks. The warm youth was lightly injured, but he managed to survive. However, he wasn't out of danger yet. Nan Gongsheng alone was enough to make him suffer. The Eye of Heaven radiated the aura of king intent and locked down Zhao Fu's soul. Ding! A blade of light slashed onto the warm youth's face and left behind a line of blood. The Heaven-Sun battle race was ranked in the top 100 of the 10,000 ancient races, and their offense and defense had reached a perfect level. With the protection of the Heaven-Sun battle race bloodline, Nan Gongsheng and the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger weren't able to critically injure him. Nightmare dimension. A hazy layer of dreamlight appeared around Meng Shi, enveloping everyone in the battlefield. In the dreamlight, everyone felt as if they were in an endless deep sea, surrounded by torrential waves. The attack speed of Nan Gongsheng and the Beast King was restricted. The scene from the deep sea of the dream realm permeated into reality. If everyone was in the deep sea, then the defending side would obviously be more powerful. As expected of the 10,000 ancient races. With two bloodlines working together, killing one of them will be extremely difficult. Zhao Feng looked down with his eye of heaven and sighed in his heart. He used all of his eye bloodline power to restrict Wen Luo'an's movements. Universe Sword. Nan Gongsheng roared. As he swung the sacred sword of inheritance, the surrounding space seemed to tremble. The nightmare space was also affected. The Cosmos sword transformed into a dazzling sword light and slashed at the young man. Puff! Wen Luo'an's figure swayed, and blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. The surface of his golden skin dimmed a little. Good job. Zhao Feng was overjoyed. Nan Gongsheng was indeed worthy of being one of the top 10 geniuses of the sacred land. Without a doubt. Nan Gongsheng's overall battle power was ranked first amongst the geniuses. Meng Shi and Wen Luo'an could only hold their ground against him. Blood Sun battles the heavens. Wen Luo'an roared as the Heaven-Sun battle race bloodline within his body started to burn. In that instant, Wen Luo'an's mental energy and true yuan rose to a whole new level. When within the resplendent golden light, an illusory heavenly blood sun appeared above Wen Luo'an's head, and the boundless energy of heaven and earth turned into his battle prowess. Not good. Zhao Feng's soul eye bloodline technique felt extremely pressured. Wen Luo'an's battle power doubled or tripled in that instant. The heavenly sun blood sun above his head raised his battle power to the level of a true king. At this moment in time, even a true king would be moved if he were to descend. Luckily, the bloodline's secret technique only increased Wen Luo'an's battle power. The increase in his soul was only secondary. However, even then, Zhao Feng's soul shackles felt extremely strained. Boom! The Qiankuan sword and Wen Luo'an's golden fist clashed together, and a terrifying wave of air created hundreds of holes within half a mile. Oh my god! The geniuses of the sacred land near the messy graveyard couldn't help but feel their hearts jump when they saw this. Tang! Nan Gongsheng's figure floated back a few yards, and a solemn expression appeared on his face. Meng Shi's nightmare dimension restricted his attack speed. Zhao Feng, it'll be very difficult to kill Wen Luo'an with these two 10,000 ancient races bloodlines teaming up. Nan Gongsheng messaged. Wen Luo'an's battle power, offense, and defense had all been raised to the limit. The increase in battle power won't last for long. Let's waste some time. Zhao Feng said in a deep tone, but he didn't lose his cool. Open. The heavenly sun blood sun above Wen Luo'an's head surged with power that increased his mental energy and battle power. The dark purple chains of lightning around him started to shake and dim. Prepare for the next round of attacks. Zhao Feng's eye of heaven floated in the air and messaged. In the next instant, crack! The dark purple chains of lightning around Wen Luo'an shattered and turned into nothingness. Joy appeared on his face, and he was about to attack. However, as soon as he moved, his head started to hurt. Void Space Eye Slash. A 3-inch-long blade of lightning flashed with scarlet light as it pierced through Wen Luo'an's head. Whoosh! The Void Space Eye Slash pierced through Wen Luo'an's head, and a beam of blood-colored light shot out. What? Meng Shi's expression changed dramatically. Woo! Wen Luo'an's body froze as blood seeped out of his head, but it was quickly healed by a layer of golden light. However, the Void Space Eye Slash contained the intent of the Scarlet Destruction Wind Lightning, and it continued to burn after piercing through his head. Mystic Spatial Rend. Nan Gongsheng paused for a moment as the silver light in his hand stabbed into the wound on Wen Luo'an's head. Whoosh! A blood-colored light spread through Wen Luo'an's golden-skinned head, and the silver light pierced half a foot into it. This was all thanks to Zhao Feng's void space eye slash. It was a perfect combination of forces from the inside and outside. It wasn't over yet. Swoosh! A dark dagger slashed into the back of Wen Luo'an's head. This was the little thieving cat's shadow kill imperial dagger. As such, the void space eye slash was the center of Wen Luo'an's head, and both ends of his head were stabbed. Ah! The sunny young man let out a shrill scream, and his body was on the verge of collapse. Meng Shi was shaken by this scene. Her body stiffened, and her eyes were filled with terror. Imagine. If such a combination of attacks were to land on her, it would be difficult for her to escape. Boom! The golden light that was as dazzling as the sun exploded, leaving behind a hole with a diameter of 1,000 feet. Such destructive power was unimaginable for the demigod Forgotten Garden. Nan Gongsheng and the little thieving cat raised their heads and saw the warm youth turn into a streak of golden light and run away. Zhao Feng, I'm going to tear you into 10,000 pieces. The warm youth's handsome face twisted as he charged toward Zhao Feng. Because of the Eye of Death, he could sense where Zhao Feng was. Shua! An eye of void appeared in the sky. Through the eye of heaven, Zhao Feng found that the wound on the warm youth's head hadn't healed yet. This damage is enough to kill a half-step void god realm no less than 10 times. Zhao Feng sighed in his heart. The top 100 bloodlines of the 10,000 ancient races couldn't be judged by normal standards. Ice Soul Shooting Line. A cold beam of transparent light descended from the sky and pierced through the warm youth's body. The warm youth's figure shook. Before he could react, divine light of destruction. A beam of dazzling cyan light, which was as sharp as countless tiny particles, struck the heaven sun blood sun above the young man's head. Boom! The heaven blood sun above Wen Luo'an's head became unstable, and its light dimmed a little. Through the divine light of destruction, Zhao Feng weakened the power of Wen Luo'an's secret technique. Right at this moment, Nan Gongsheng used a spatial movement technique, and a silver figure appeared with the Qiankuan sword and slashed toward the wound on Wen Luo'an's head. Meng Shi was temporarily stalled by the little thieving cat and the Beast King. Very good, Meng Shi and Wen Luo'an have split up. Zhao Feng revealed a joyful expression. Luckily, he had a powerful ally like Nan Gongsheng. In the air of the demonic Forgotten Garden, a battle that spanned across space shook the soul to the core. The geniuses of the sacred grounds below were all shocked. No matter how Wen Luo'an tried to dodge, he couldn't escape from Nan Gongsheng and the Eye of Heaven. Nan Gongsheng had spatial talent and spatial techniques, so he was able to keep up with the warm youth. On the other hand, the Eye of Heaven was able to see even more than before. At this moment, Wen Luo'an was being beaten up. Nan Gongsheng and the Eye of Heaven are teaming up. What a battle across space. Why does that Eye of Heaven look like junior martial brother Zhao Zai? The geniuses of the Mystic True Sacred Clan saw more clues. Boom! Boom! The warm youth was covered in injuries, but he wasn't willing to give up. However, he was stubborn and unyielding. His face was filled with murderous intent as he charged in the direction of the library. 4 hours later, the warm youth finally reached the courtyard where the hidden book room was. At this moment in time, Zhao Feng and Wen Luo'an were dozens of yards away from each other. Void Space Eye Slash. The meter-long blade pierced through Wen Luo'an's brain once again. Shua! Blood splattered as Wen Luo'an's golden skin cracked open once more, and the golden light around him dimmed by more than half. Zhao! Zhao Feng! Wen Luo'an's bloodied body swayed as he walked toward the hidden book room. Everyone nearby could see that the warm youth was at the end of his tether. Nan Gongsheng's eyebrows furrowed, but he didn't attack anymore. He was prideful and didn't want to gang up on a genius of the same generation that was on the verge of death. Zhao Feng, even if I die, I'll drag you down with me. When Luoan's true yuan started to burn, and a golden sun appeared behind him as he bathed in a layer of golden flames. Not good. Nan Gongsheng's expression changed dramatically. It was obvious that when Luoan wanted to drag him down with him. Shua. Nan Gongsheng immediately used a spatial movement technique and retreated. The instant he retreated, he saw a giant blood-colored sun clash with Wen Luoan, who was in a ball of golden flames, and explode, engulfing the entire hidden book room. Boom! The hidden book room exploded and was engulfed by limitless golden flames. Even kings would be turned to ashes by this forbidden power. The entire hidden book room was flattened. This was the first time a building had been completely destroyed since the opening of the Forgotten Garden. Wah! Nan Gongsheng was slightly affected, and he spat out a mouthful of blood in the air before landing on the ground. He couldn't imagine what would happen to Zhao Feng, who was facing the forbidden power within the hidden book room. At the same time, boom! The dimension of the demigod Forgotten Garden started to tremble, and lights started to shine. The demigod Forgotten Garden is about to close. Chapter 670. The deafening explosion caused the geniuses of the sacred grounds nearby to tremble in fear. The area where the hidden library was located was turned into scorched earth. Golden flames and crimson light burned quietly. The warm youth and Zhao Feng were nowhere to be seen. There weren't even any remains of their corpses. The nearby geniuses couldn't bear to watch. Both Zhao Feng and Wen Luoan were the dark horses of the demigod Forgotten Garden. What a pity! Nan Gongsheng looked at the golden flames and the blood-colored light. Everything turned to dust without a trace. One had to admit that the legendary bloodlines of the 10,000 ancient races were heaven-defying. Even under the constant attacks of Nan Gongsheng and the Eye of Heaven, they were still able to kill their way to where Zhao Feng was and destroy everything. Boom! The dimension of the demigod Forgotten Garden started to tremble, and colorful lights flashed through the air. Meow meow. The little thieving cat sat on the Beast King and quickly flew over. Meng Shi also arrived with it. Are they all dead? Meng Shi was slightly dazed. She was exhausted before the demigod Forgotten Garden closed, so she gave up on fighting. Thieving cat, your master is already dead. Why don't you become my spiritual pet? Meng Shi's dreamy eyes looked toward the little thieving cat. Although she still held a grudge against this thieving cat, if she could have such an intelligent spirit pet, even Meng Shi would be moved. Meow. The little thieving cat's mouth twitched as it raised its head and looked into the clouds. Everyone followed its gaze and looked into the sky. That's... High up in the clouds, a blue-haired youth with a pair of wind and lightning wings extended from his back. Traces of blue water appeared on his body. The blue-haired youth's face was pale white, and he seemed extremely weak. Zhao Feng. The expressions of Nan Gongsheng, Meng Shi, and company changed dramatically. That's right. The blue-haired youth in the clouds was Zhao Feng. Lightning wings flying technique. Zhao Feng's expression was cold as the wings of wind and lightning on his back flapped and blurred. Shua. The wings of wind and lightning flashed through the air, as if they had broken through space. The next instant, the wings of wind lightning appeared next to Nan Gongsheng. Zhao Feng. Nan Gongsheng exclaimed softly as he stared at the blue-haired youth within the light of the wings of wind and thunder. Apart from Nan Gongsheng and Meng Shi, no one else saw Zhao Feng's lightning wings flying technique. A strange light flashed through the little thieving cat's eyes. Indeed. Zhao Feng's thunder wings flying escape technique originated from a profound secret skill of the wings of wind and lightning. However, it wasn't hard to see that this movement technique was based on the little thieving cat's spatial movement technique and Nan Gongsheng's spatial movement technique. In fact, when he was chasing Tu Jusing in the Mermaid Divine Hall, the lightning wings flying escape technique had already taken shape. Afterward, Zhao Feng comprehended King intent, and after observing Nan Gongxing's spatial movement technique, he finally completed the lightning wings flying technique. Zhao Feng sensed something the moment before the sunny young man blew himself up and destroyed everything in his path. His god's spiritual eye saw the changes in the warm youth's true yuan and bloodline energy. Therefore, at the critical moment, Zhao Feng used the lightning wings flying technique and barely escaped. Even then, Zhao Feng was also injured by the shockwave from Wen Luo'an's self-destruction. Blue water flowed around Zhao Feng's body and healed his injuries. Senior Martial Brother Nan Gongsheng, this is your reward. Zhao Feng opened his hand and handed over 10 purple scaled grass and a mermaid tear to Nan Gongsheng. The eyes of everyone present almost popped out of their sockets when they saw this scene. Meng Shi couldn't help but be surprised. No wonder Nan Gongsheng was working so hard to kill Wen Luo'an for Zhao Feng. So much so, she and Wen Luo'an were still planning and hadn't even done anything when Zhao Feng and Nan Gongsheng attacked first. You're very strong. Nan Gongsheng took the purple-scaled grass and the mermaid tear and gave a deep look at Zhao Feng. He could obviously tell that Zhao Feng's lightning wings flying technique had used some of the principles of his spatial movement technique. The first time he noticed Zhao Feng was at the 10,000 treasure tower. Zhao Feng's eye bloodline came through the air and took the sky-locking bow. At that time, he had already paid attention to this junior martial brother of the same clan. Senior martial brother Nan Gongsheng is too kind. You're the #1 genius of the sacred land. Zhao Feng said courteously. If he didn't have Nan Gongsheng's help, he wouldn't have been a match for the warm youth. On the other side, there was a trace of resentment and unwillingness on Meng Shi's beautiful face, as well as a bit of fear. Zhao Feng and Nan Gongsheng didn't attack Meng Shi. Meng Shi's master was a mystic light realm sacred lord. No one was willing to offend her too much. Meow meow. The little thieving cat threw the purple horn into Meng Shi's hand. The demigod Forgotten Garden was about to close. This purple Qilin jade horn no longer had any value unless the demigod Forgotten Garden opened 500 years later. Humph. Meng Shi caught the horn, but she didn't seem to care. She looked at Zhao Feng a few times, as if she wanted to remember this enemy. Zhao Feng didn't move. His gaze fell on the golden flames and bloody light that were still burning. Wen Luo'an. Zhao Feng slowly spoke, one day, we will switch roles. Who is the prey and who is the hunter is still unknown. Hearing that, the hearts of the geniuses present shook. Many people finally realized that although the blazing golden light had dimmed by half, it was still burning and hadn't been extinguished. When the golden flames suddenly shrank into a ball of golden flames, which flickered and transformed into a young man wreathed in golden flames and bloody light. What? The geniuses of the sacred land exclaimed. The flames of desire have been reborn. Meng Shi watched as the radiant youth's body gradually condensed, and the golden flames around him retracted. Wen Luo'an's face was as pale as a sheet, and he half knelt on the ground. Zhao Feng found. Wen Luo'an's cultivation dropped from the late-stage Great Origin Core Realm to the early-stage Great Origin Core Realm, and he almost fell to the Small Origin Core Realm. However, at this moment, Zhao Feng was also powerless to attack the sunny youth. He had used up almost all of his eye bloodline power and yuan qi. Zhao Feng, our battle has just begun. If it wasn't for the demigod Forgotten Garden, if it wasn't for Nan Gongsheng, you would have died by my hands long ago. Wen Luo'an's pale face was filled with reluctance. At this moment, rumble, the demigod Forgotten Garden shook, and the entire dimension was covered in a layer of rainbow light. Whoosh! 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 The figures of the geniuses in the demigod Forgotten Garden turned transparent and disappeared from the demigod's garden. Zhao Feng and the others felt the power of the demigod intent. Unfortunately, the demigod intent has merged with the demigod Forgotten Garden and follows the laws left behind when it was alive. The Kuan Yun partial thought murmured. The demigod intent was fair and just like the heavenly Tao in the demigod Forgotten Garden. It didn't have its own consciousness and only followed the laws of nature. Zhao Feng understood. If he could obtain this demigod intent, then the Kun Yun partial thought's chances of regaining the strength of a demigod after being reborn with blood would increase. Whoosh! Zhao Feng's figure started to become transparent and was about to disappear from the demigod Forgotten Garden. However, right at this moment, the situation changed. Boom! A shocking surge of demigod intent crushed over with a magnificent force. Zhao Feng's figure paused as if he was frozen in the air. Not good. Zhao Feng's expression changed dramatically. He understood that the demigod intent was the god of the demigod Forgotten Garden and ruled over everything. If the demigod intent wanted to kill someone, even a void god realm king wouldn't be able to fight back. At this moment the Kun Yun partial thought and the demigod's blood within the green spiritual gourd started to tremble. Luckily, this vast energy only stopped on Zhao Feng's body for half a breath. One breath later, whoosh! Zhao Feng's transparent figure disappeared from the demigod Forgotten Garden. True martial sacred land, 10,000 ancient sacred peak on the top of a mountain that was in ruins, whoosh! 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 Geniuses of the sacred land came out from the demigod Forgotten Garden one after another. We're finally out. We've gained quite a bit this time. Some voices sounded from the crowd. Whoosh! Zhao Feng's figure also appeared from the crowd. No one noticed that Zhao Feng appeared slightly later than everyone else. Beads of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. At the last moment, the pressure of the demigods will descended upon him, giving him quite a scare. Junior brother Zhao, in this opening of the Forgotten Garden, you can be said to be the true dark horse. Qin Yilin, Jiang Fan, and company gave him friendly gazes. For the opening of the Forgotten Garden this time, I'll have to trouble junior apprentice brother Zhao. That's right. If it wasn't for junior martial brother Zhao, we wouldn't have been able to take over the Mermaid Kingdom. Qin Yilin, Jiang Fan, and company were all grateful and respectful toward Zhao Feng. On the mystic true sacred clan's side, Zhao Feng's appearance attracted everyone's attention. Under Zhao Feng's lead, Qin Yilin and company took over the Mermaid Kingdom and obtained mermaid tears, illusion god wine, and several thousand years of success. Many people were envious. Junior martial brother Zhao, thank you for the purple-scaled grass and mermaid tears. Nan Gongsheng said with a smile. The purple-scaled grass could make up for the difference between his bloodline and Meng Shi's, giving him a defensive bloodline. On the other hand, the mermaid tears could help cleanse his cultivation. After all, Nan Gongsheng had only formed his king intent for a short time. Zhao Feng nodded his head in response. He guessed that Nan Gongsheng would become a void god realm king soon. On the sacred peak, Zhao Feng became the focus of many geniuses and there were many female geniuses who gave him flirtatious looks. In the crowd, senior martial brother Nan and Dong Wenjian had ugly expressions. When they first entered the demonic garden, Zhao Feng wasn't on the same team as them and was mocked by senior martial brother Nan and company. At this moment in time, some geniuses in senior martial brother Nan's team couldn't help but feel regretful. Dong Wenjian's intestines turned green. He and Zhao Feng were both disciples of Emperor Duanmu. If he had followed Zhao Feng back then, he would have at least gotten some benefits from the Mermaid Kingdom. Shua! 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 On the sacred peak, the elders of some clans that were at least at the king rank appeared. Most of them were worried about the safety and rewards of their juniors. Nan Gongsheng, Zhao Feng, Qin Yilin, and company from the mystic true sacred clan had obtained a lot and were the winners of the demigod Forgotten Garden. The kings and emperors were all surprised by Zhao Feng's performance in the demigod Forgotten Garden. In terms of rewards, Zhao Feng and Nan Gongsheng were evenly matched, or maybe even slightly better. Of course, no one knew that Zhao Feng had obtained the demigod's blood. An hour later, Zhao Feng returned to the main spiritual peak with the group from the Mystic True Sacred Clan. Master. The excited voice of the Kun Yun partial thought sounded from the green spiritual gourd as soon as he returned. What is it? Zhao Feng's divine sense entered the green spiritual gourd in his ancient metal ring. What he saw made him jump up in fright. Apart from the Kun Yun partial thought and the demigod's blood, there was also a unique mental energy power within the green spiritual gourd. Demigod intent. Zhao Feng's soul felt suppressed. Chapter 671. The mental energy aura from the green spiritual gourd made Zhao Feng take in a cold breath. The demigod's blood and Kun Yun partial thought within the gourd trembled slightly. The Kun Yun partial thought trembled in excitement. Why did demigod intent come out? Zhao Feng's heart shook. Demigod intent was a type of mental energy that gave birth to the demigod's comprehension of heaven and earth. Luckily, this demigod intent was just pure mental energy. It was intelligent, but it didn't have its own memories. Zhao Feng and the Kun Yun partial thought discussed and found out the reason. The instant Zhao Feng left the Forgotten Garden, the demigod intent's power suddenly pressed down. Right at that moment, a part of the demigod intent entered the green spiritual gourd. Then, why did the demigod intent follow Zhao Feng? Zhao Feng thought that it was because of the demigod's blood and the Kun Yun partial thought. The demigod's blood corresponded to the demigod's body essence. The Kun Yun partial thought corresponded to the demigod's mental energy consciousness. When the two combined, it had the demigod's body and mental energy aura. Coincidentally, the demigod intent and the mental energy of a demigod sensed the aura of its master and followed Zhao Feng. That was why. A part of the demigod intent left the Forgotten Garden and entered the green spiritual gourd. Master. With this demigod intent, I'll be able to return to my peak if I can be reborn from a single drop of blood. The Kun Yun partial thought said excitedly. Because, the demigod intent contained the demigod's comprehension of heaven and earth. At the same time, it was also a powerful mental energy. According to Zhao Feng's estimation, this small part of the demigod intent was comparable to a complete king intent, and because it came from a demigod, it was even more special. This meant that, this demigod intent could suppress a king intent. But after being reborn as a demigod, I'll face a certain amount of danger, especially this demigod intent. Zhao Feng's eyes twinkled. He started to think about how to activate the demigod rebirth plan and use this power to the fullest. Think about it. Given how transcendent a demigod was, once he came back to life, how could he willingly submit to Zhao Feng? Master. If I'm reborn and possess this demigod intent, I'll be able to enter the demigod Forgotten Garden at will and regain control of it. Kun Yun's remnant will try its best to persuade Zhao Feng. Control the demigod Forgotten Garden. Zhao Feng's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. The level of the demigod Forgotten Garden was much higher than the Purple Saint ruins. Even emperors and mystic light realm sacred lords couldn't resist its temptation. If he could control the demigod Forgotten Garden, he would have an enormous amount of resources, which would greatly boost his cultivation. I promise to activate the demigod rebirth project, but not now. Zhao Feng nodded. He did not lose his cool. With his current strength, even if he were to awaken as a demigod and take control of the demigod Forgotten Garden, it would only bring disaster upon himself. The true martial sacred land had 2 3-star sects and 33 2-star sections. How could they let a junior who wasn't even a king take all the benefits of the demigod Forgotten Garden? In the next couple of days, Zhao Feng started to recover from his injuries. His divine sense started to clear out the spoils of war in the demigod Forgotten Garden. During this period of time, Zhao Feng also met some small problems. After leaving the demigod Forgotten Garden, some people came to visit him every day. At first, it was Dong Wenjian from the same clan. In the next couple of days, it was other core disciples, kings, and emperors from the upper echelon of the clan. Most of these people were interested in what Zhao Feng had obtained in the demigod Forgotten Garden. Several kings and emperors hinted that they wanted to trade Zhao Feng's sky-locking bow or borrow the head of a demigod corpse. Many geniuses needed the Immortal Springs wine, Illusion God wine, Mermaid Tears, and Purple-Scaled Grass. Some kings and emperors came to ask for a trade for their disciples. The Illusion God wine could help one comprehend higher realms and help one break through to the Void God realm. In the sect, some of the mid-level half-step kings were also very eager for it. As for the Purple-Scaled Grass, it could increase a bloodline ability, and it was very attractive to some kings. Zhao Feng dominated the Purple Smoke Lake in the demigod Forgotten Garden and obtained countless treasures. Some of the treasures weren't as valuable as the Illusion God wine, but any one or two of them were enough to make normal sovereign lords go crazy. Over the past few days, the door to Zhao Feng's residence had almost been flattened. Zhao Feng reluctantly agreed to some of the deals, but he rejected others. He didn't want to offend those kings and emperors. However, Zhao Feng wouldn't trade the sky-locking bow or the demigod corpse. Zhao Feng also wanted to keep some Illusion God wine and Mermaid Tears for himself, mainly for Zhao Yufei. This was because Zhao Yufei's bloodline was extremely compatible with the Heaven-Earth Yuan Qi, but her comprehension of the soul was slightly lacking. In order to get rid of these problems, Zhao Feng had to leave his residence and move to Duanmu Qing's palace. Although Duanmu Qing hadn't returned yet, this was still the residence of a martial emperor. Furthermore, Duanmu Qing left a void god projection in the martial emperor's residence. Finally, Zhao Feng's life became quieter. The butler of the martial emperor's residence helped Zhao Feng block most visitors. Even some kings and emperors couldn't force Duanmu Qing's void god projection. In the martial emperor's residence inside a secluded secret hall, Zhao Feng sat cross-legged on the ground with 3 wine cups floating above his palm. 1 purple crystal cup, 1 redwood cup, and 1 bronze cup. The 3 cups corresponded to 3 types of spiritual wine and celestial wine. Illusion God wine, Dragon Flame wine, Lightning Cloud wine. These 3 wines belonged to the same level and came from the demigod's wine cellar. Dragon Flame wine and Lightning Cloud wine can increase my comprehension of the Scarlet Destruction Wind Lightning. Zhao Feng had a plan. Apart from these 2 wines, he also had the head of the demigod corpse. The demigod corpse contained the aura of the god Tribulation Lightning, which might help Zhao Feng increase the power of the Wind Lightning inheritance. The power of the god Tribulation Lightning countered all cultivators in heaven and earth. It could be said to be the most terrifying lightning. Lightning shock. 10,000 lightning sect. Maybe I'll give you guys a surprise. A faint smile appeared on Zhao Feng's face. Shua. Zhao Feng waved his hand and put away the 3 wines. He had gained a lot from the demigod Forgotten Garden and could improve a lot. 3 days later, Zhao Feng's injuries had fully recovered, and his energy had returned to its peak. Master, when will the demigod revival plan start? The Kuan Yun partial thought couldn't help but ask. Right now, it was only a wisp of soul intent. It didn't even have a physical body, so it wasn't even considered a soul. In a few more days, Zhao Feng took out a mermaid tear and a soul-gathering grass and gave them to the Kuan Yun partial thought. Next, his target was the demigod's blood. The demigod's blood was the key to reviving from a single drop of blood. For example, the Purple Knight's Sacred Lord didn't even leave a drop of blood behind, so there was no way for him to revive. Appear. Zhao Feng grabbed at the air, and a drop of faint golden god blood appeared on his palm. The secret hall he was in was extremely well sealed, so he didn't need to worry about the aura of the demigod's blood leaking out. Furthermore, after the battle in the demigod Forgotten Garden, the demigod's blood was extremely weak, and its ability to resist was much weaker. Next, what Zhao Feng needed to do was absorb a portion of the demigod's blood's power. The demigod's blood essence contained the essence of the demigod's body, and it was extremely beneficial to those below the Sacred Lord realm. Ice Imperial Seal. A crystal-like dark blue seal of light appeared on Xiao Feng's other hand. It was like an ice lotus had bloomed, and it radiated the cold power of the Ice Imperial Emperor. The first step. He needed to freeze the demigod's blood essence first so that he could absorb the demigod's power. Therefore, Xiao Feng circulated his bloodline power to the maximum, and he unleashed the full power of the Ice Imperial Spear. It took an entire hour. Xiao Feng had only managed to freeze the demigod's blood essence after using more than half of his bloodline power. Next, Xiao Feng started to absorb the power of the demigod's blood through the power of the ice-water bloodline. Master, you can't do this. The Kun Yun partial thought within the green spiritual gourd cried out. Xiao Feng remained unmoved as he slowly absorbed the power of the demigod's blood. When a wisp of faint golden blood slowly merged into Xiao Feng's bloodline. At this moment, Xiao Feng's state of existence was comparable to a king's. The crystal core within his body had also reached the early stage Great Origin Core realm. His physical defense had been strengthened by the purple-scaled grass, and it was one of the strongest below the Void God realm. However, when the wisp of faint golden blood merged into his bloodline body, Xiao Feng felt a piercing pain in his bones and flesh. His true yuan and bloodline started to tremble. However, the effect of the demigod's blood was also shocking. It was more than 100 times stronger than the heart blood essence. Just a few wisps of faint golden blood caused Xiao Feng's bloodline to increase by leaps and bounds. Even the quality of Xiao Feng's true yuan and the power of his soul also increased. Blood essence contained the essence of an expert's spirit, energy, and soul. On top of that, this drop of blood essence came from a demigod. 2 days later, Xiao Feng's bloodline became stronger. My state of existence has reached the Void God realm. Excitement flashed through Xiao Feng's eyes. He hadn't even absorbed 1/10 of the demigod's blood's effect. Within the green spiritual gourd, Master, you need at least 60% God's blood or else the success rate of rebirth will decrease. The Kun Yun partial thought cried. Xiao Feng ignored it and continued to absorb the power of the demigod's blood. On this day, an idea suddenly appeared in Xiao Feng's mind. He merged a wisp of faint golden blood into his left eye through the ice-water bloodline. Merge the god's blood into the god's spiritual eye. Boom! A loud explosion sounded in Xiao Feng's soul dimension. Within the dimension of his left eye, the lake of eye bloodline power started to surge, and a suction force came from the whirlpool. Instantly, the power of the demigod's blood quickly flowed into the god's spiritual eye. The situation was like a dried-up river meeting dew after a long drought. In the blink of an eye, 1/3 of the demigod's blood's power was absorbed. Xiao Feng's left eye started to shine with a purple light, and the divine power from the ancient era became stronger. Whoosh! Part of Xiao Feng's hair was purple as it blew in the wind. At this instant, the hearts of many king martial emperors within the true martial sacred land shook as they sensed something not good. Xiao Feng immediately blocked the god's spiritual eye and stopped absorbing the demigod's blood. At this moment, only half of the demigod's blood remained. A portion of the power was absorbed or stored by Xiao Feng's body, and the rest was absorbed by the god's spiritual eye. Xiao Feng's left eye glittered with a purple light, and even more faint purple appeared in his hair. Chapter 672. In just a breath or two, the demigod's blood was sucked out by the god's spiritual eye and only half was left. Master, stop. The Kun Yun partial thought was terrified. What was the origin of Master's left eye? How could it suck out the demigod's blood in such a dominating manner? Luckily, Xiao Feng quickly stopped the god's spiritual eye. Within the dimension of the left eye, the lake of eye bloodline power had reached 99 yards and was approaching 100 yards. Occasionally, streams of purple light would appear in the lake of eye power. Furthermore, the aura of the god's spiritual eye had become stronger, and the level of its eye bloodline seemed to have increased. The demigod's blood has helped the god's spiritual eye awaken and transform. Zhao Feng's expression froze. The lake of eye bloodline power reaching 100 yards would be a critical point. At this stage, Zhao Feng wasn't willing to enter a deep sleep yet. Furthermore, he had to leave at least half of the god's blood for the demigod's rebirth. Master, you can't take any more of the demigod's blood. The Kun Yun partial thought's voice was filled with tears and pleading. The demigod's blood was the only thing that could allow him to be reborn. After all, it wasn't a complete soul, so there was still a chance for it to be reborn. After being reborn, you have to agree to let me plant the dark heart seed. Zhao Feng said. After being reborn, the demigod's strength and growth were immeasurable. Zhao Feng took half of the demigod's blood not only to increase his own strength, but also to weaken the demigod after being reborn. I agree. The Kun Yun partial thought for a while and finally agreed. The dark heart seed wasn't as taboo as the dark heart seal. It enslaved the target both physically and mentally. The target that was planted with the dark heart seed would only have their life in danger, but they would have their own consciousness and wouldn't be affected. When I'm reborn and reach a certain level, I'll be able to easily dispel the dark heart seed. The Kun Yun partial thought had his own plans. Zhao Feng ignored the Kun Yun partial thought and started to check his body. Apart from the god's spiritual eye absorbing a lot of the demigod's essence blood, Zhao Feng's body also storing it. After a round of inspection, Zhao Feng was pleasantly surprised. His physique was at least at the king level, and a part of the divine blood's power was stored in his body, turning into boundless potential. As long as I can fully convert this potential, my physique and cultivation base will improve greatly. Zhao Feng felt relieved. Becoming a king was only a matter of time for him, at least a year. If it were an ordinary supremacy, it would take several decades or even longer to advance a small level. As for the king realm, most origin core realms wouldn't be able to touch that domain even after hundreds of years. From this, one could see the importance of opportunity. Zhao Feng used the immortal spring water, the demigod blood, the ancient dream realm aura, and other powers to raise his life force to the king level. Meanwhile, the illusion god wine and the eye of heaven allowed him to gain a deep understanding of the king's intent and form a half-step king's will. Zhao Feng still had some illusion god wine in his hands. Even if he didn't use it, he could still nurture a complete king's will. I'm not in a rush to nurture a king's intent. When my wind lightning inheritance reaches a higher level, the king's intent will be even stronger. Zhao Feng's thoughts spun rapidly. Right now, he couldn't try to comprehend the king's intent. If he did, Zhao Feng's god's spiritual eye would most likely undergo a change. Zhao Feng started to try to refine the sky-locking bow. The sky-locking bow was an inheritance-type sacred item, and its true grade could reach the heaven grade. Zhao Feng always felt that bows were more suitable for him than divine weapons. And this sky-locking bow had the ability to break through space. Targets locked onto by the sky-locking bow had no chance of dodging. However, it wasn't that easy to refine this bow. The sky-locking bow followed Zhao Feng because the two powers were compatible. However, Zhao Feng's cultivation was far from enough. Which of the sky-locking bow's previous owners wasn't at the emperor level? Even the previous owner of the ice imperial spear was either a king or an emperor, not to mention the higher-level sky-locking bow. During the refining process, Zhao Feng met with resistance. Firstly, the sky-locking bow's grade was too high and didn't fully acknowledge Zhao Feng. Secondly, Zhao Feng's cultivation wasn't high enough. With Zhao Feng's half-step king intent, he couldn't fully acknowledge the sky-locking bow. Then let's try this. Zhao Feng merged the power of his god's spiritual eye into the sky-locking bow. Wang. The sky-locking bow's surface glowed with an ancient silver luster. On the bowstring, a cold golden light circulated endlessly. Obviously, The sky-locking bow's initial acknowledgement of Zhao Feng was mainly due to the god's spiritual eye. Then, let's try this. Zhao Feng's lips curled as he merged a wisp of ancient dream realm aura into the sky-locking bow. Wang! The sky-locking bow's bowstring trembled as gold and silver light intertwined, emitting a sharp aura that could pierce through heaven and earth. Zhao Feng felt as if his body and mind had been pierced through. Even the Kun Yun remnant thought within the green spiritual gourd felt uneasy. Very good. The bloodline power and ancient dream realm aura can help with the refinement. Zhao Feng nodded inwardly. In the next few days, his refinement of the sky-locking bow was much smoother. In total, it took him 6 to 7 days. Zhao Feng obtained the complete acknowledgement of the sky-locking bow and refined it. As an inheritance sacred weapon, Zhao Feng could barely control it with his half-step king intent. However, right now, Zhao Feng didn't want to reveal the sky-locking bow as his trump card. On the third day after Zhao Feng refined the sky-locking bow, the Mystic True Sacred Clan gave birth to a new King Realm expert. This new King Realm expert was Nan Gongsheng. Breaking through to the King Realm in his 30s has already broken the Mystic True Sacred Clan's 10,000-year-old record. As expected of a genius who possesses both the heavenly spiritual body and the ethereal spiritual body, the Mystic True Sacred Clan was in an uproar. The birth of a new King Realm expert was worth celebrating even for a 3-star power. Furthermore, it was such a young king. This matter shook the entire true martial Holy Land. On the second day, the upper echelon of the Sacred Clan held a celebration for Nan Gongsheng. Zhao Feng was also invited to participate in the banquet. The scale of this celebration banquet was much larger than Emperor Duanmu's disciple recruitment ceremony. Any King Realm expert would be able to look down on the masses and have a high status. Furthermore, such a young king breaking the 10,000-year-old record meant that his future was immeasurable. Many kings and emperors in the clan wanted to form a good relationship with Nan Gongsheng. With Nan Gongsheng's potential, there was a high chance that he would become an emperor in the future. He might even become a mystic light realm sacred lord in a few thousand or even 10,000 years and become the ruler of the sacred land. Zhao Feng was also present at the celebration. In the demigod ruins, Nan Gongsheng was Zhao Feng's strong ally. If it wasn't for Nan Gongsheng, Zhao Feng wouldn't have been able to defeat the warm youth and would have been in great danger. Nan Gongsheng was obviously the center of attention at the celebration. He was like a bright moon in the night sky. Even some of the older emperors were very polite when talking to him. "Junior brother Zhao, you're here as well." Nan Gongsheng smiled and went over to greet Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng's performance in the demigod Forgotten Garden made Nan Gongsheng look at him in a different light. Nan Gongsheng would have viewed Zhao Feng as a strong opponent before he became a king. However, now, Nan Gongsheng's strength had increased by leaps and bounds after becoming a king. He was much stronger than normal Void God Realm kings. "Senior brother Nan Gongsheng, congratulations on becoming a King Realm king. I can only look up to you." Zhao Feng smiled faintly and toasted Nan Gongsheng. Nan Gongsheng smiled and said, "Junior brother Zhao, there's no need to be so humble. With your current potential, becoming a king in 2 or 3 years won't be a problem." Hearing this, the crowd broke into an uproar. Become a king in 2 or 3 years. Some of the members at the banquet couldn't believe it. A King Realm king stood above all life and looked down on all life. Even in 2 or 3-star sets, they were a powerful force. That was an unreachable level. Some kings and emperors' hearts shook when they scanned Zhao Feng with their divine sense. After leaving the demigod Forgotten Garden, it wasn't a secret that Zhao Feng had formed half-step king intent. Zhao Feng had successfully entered the Mermaid Kingdom in the demigod Forgotten Garden and obtained the Mermaid Tear Crystal, Immortal Fountain Water, Illusion God Wine, and other treasures. Everyone couldn't help but think so. Zhao Feng had obtained even more from blackmailing the Mermaid Princess than that sacred land genius had. In terms of strategy, he was more advanced. After all, the reason that Sacred Land Genius had been able to succeed was mostly due to luck. Thank you for your kind words, senior brother Nan Gongsheng. Zhao Feng didn't deny Nan Gongsheng's words. He's only at the Great Origin Core realm, and he's going to become a king in 2 or 3 years. Some members and disciples didn't say anything. However, some kings and emperors looked at Zhao Feng with solemn gazes. In reality, Zhao Feng was already being very humble by not denying it. King intent didn't pose much of a problem for Zhao Feng. His state of existence had also reached the king level. Furthermore, Zhao Feng hadn't completely absorbed the demigod's blood, so there were still many treasures that he hadn't used yet. Zhao Feng's progress is too fast. Some people familiar with Zhao Feng, such as Qin Yilin, Jiang Fan, and Dong Wenjian, were stunned. When they entered the demigod Forgotten Garden, Zhao Feng was only at the late-stage Small Origin Core realm. But now, after absorbing part of the demigod's blood, Zhao Feng's cultivation was close to the middle-stage Great Origin Core realm. If Zhao Feng could become a king in 2 or 3 years, he would break Nan Gongsheng's record. Becoming a king before the age of 30. Zhao Feng was only 22 or 23 years old right now. When he started in the Zhao clan, he was only 13 or 14 years old. At the celebration banquet, Zhao Feng became the second center of attention after Nan Gongsheng. Nan Gongsheng viewed him as one of the few opponents of his generation. With Zhao Feng's eye bloodline, he would definitely be a strong opponent once he became a king. Half a day later, the celebration banquet ended. Zhao Feng returned to Duanmu Qing's residence. Master, when will you return to the true martial sacred land? Zhao Feng saw Emperor Duanmu's Void God projection. The Void God projection looked exactly the same as Duanmu Qing, but it was in an illusory form. It might take another half a month. I'm helping Yufei inherit the Purple Saint ruins and turn it into her own little heaven and earth. The Void God projection replied. Zhao Feng was surprised. Normally, only emperors could create their own little heaven and earth. A little heaven and earth was a personal space that one created. For example, the demigod Forgotten Garden was a mystic realm created by a demigod. How could Yufei control a little heaven and earth with her cultivation? Although Zhao Feng didn't understand, he didn't think too much about it. He returned to the secret hall, took a deep breath, and took out the demigod's blood. Rebirth from a drop of blood is finally starting. The Kun Yun partial thought trembled with excitement. Chapter 673. Zhao Feng finally decided to use the demigod rebirth plan. The demigod's blood was sealed in ice and only had half of its power left. Shua! The Kun Yun partial thought couldn't resist anymore and shot out. Ice and water. Zhao Feng circulated his bloodline power, and the ice turned into water at a visible speed. The power of the demigod's blood was also released. Luckily, the secret hall where Zhao Feng was in seclusion was very well sealed. After all, it was the place where Emperor Duanmu used to cultivate. It's starting. Zhao Feng nodded his head toward the Kun Yun partial thought. When the Kun Yun partial thought was still a ball of faint light, but the mental energy aura it gave off was stronger than when it was in the demigod Forgotten Garden. Although it was just a wisp of partial thought, the mental energy it contained was stronger than normal experts. After all, it was also a demigod partial thought. Rebirth from blood. The Kun Yun partial thought flashed and merged into the demigod's blood without any obstruction. If it was a normal mental energy intent, it would definitely be rejected by the demigod's blood. However, the Kun Yun partial thought was a mental energy intent that came from the demigod's soul, so the two were very close. I want to see the legendary technique of rebirth from blood. Zhao Feng was fully focused. In reality, the Kun Yun partial thought didn't know much about rebirth from blood. However, it didn't need to learn this legendary technique. Rebirth from blood had been successfully cultivated when the demigod was alive and merged this ability into his flesh and blood. Once the body died, as long as the mental energy wasn't destroyed, any drop of blood could be reborn from blood. Rebirth from blood was 95% complete when the demigod was alive. The Kuan-Yin partial thought only needed to complete the 5% guidance to be reborn from blood. Of course, there were many conditions to complete this legendary technique. If the main body wasn't dead, then even the Kuan-Yin partial thought wouldn't be able to complete rebirth from blood. Or if the demigod had a partial soul of a higher level, then the Kuan-Yin partial thought wouldn't be able to skip levels. All the intents were already set when the demigod was alive. When the Kuan-Yin partial thought merged into the demigod's blood essence, and wisps of golden blood appeared like boiling metal. At first, Zhao Feng could feel the mental energy undulation of the Kuan-Yin partial thought. Its mental energy was perfectly compatible with the demigod energy contained in the blood essence. Gradually, the essence blood even produced a trace of obscure life energy that only humans could have. Zhao Feng knew that the demigod's blood was nourishing the Kuan-Yin partial thought. An hour later, the demigod's blood that was boiling like liquid metal slowly solidified into a glassy golden bead. Whoosh! With a flash, the golden bead flew into the air and landed in Zhao Feng's hand. Interesting. Zhao Feng could feel the mental information of the Kuan-Yin remnant thought in the golden glazed bead. All right. With a wave of his hand, he took out a few drops of immortal spring water, divided them into several drops, and dripped them on the glazed golden bead. Buzz! After absorbing the immortal spring water, the golden glassy bead expanded at a rapid pace. In fact, the effect of the immortal spring was to increase the speed of blood rebirth. Not long after, the glazed golden bead was already the size of an apple. It would be more appropriate to call it a golden egg. Meow meow. The little thieving cat had jumped out at some point, and its eyes twinkled as it watched the process of blood rebirth. A strange look flashed across its black gem-like eyes. Let's try this. Zhao Feng took out another drop of origin life force and dripped it onto the golden egg. The origin life force contained a large amount of life force. Back in the Purple Saint ruins, the 3 two-star sects had used origin life force to make the demonic hell vine grow. Legend had it. A drop of origin life force could turn a land of death within 100 miles into fertile land, and it could be used to grow all kinds of herbs for 1,000 years. From this, one could see how terrifying the life force contained within the origin life force was. At this moment in time, a drop of the life original fluid was undoubtedly the best catalyst to speed up the blood rebirth. When the glassy golden egg was still expanding, and it emitted wisps of life energy. The markings on the golden egg were ancient and mysterious. This scene made Zhao Feng think back to when he first obtained the little thieving cat. At the start, the little thieving cat was a special, hatching egg. According to common sense, cats were mammals and did not incubate their offspring with eggs. Blood rebirth also needs certain conditions. If the conditions aren't met, it can be stopped. Zhao Feng's eyes twinkled as they landed on the little thieving cat. The little thieving cat crossed its arms and didn't move. Half a day later, the golden egg expanded to the size of half a bucket before finally stopping. Then, the surface of the golden egg became harder and harder. Zhao Feng seemed to receive a wisp of mental energy intent, and a ball of purple destruction lightning fire appeared in his hand, which made the surface of the egg drier and harder. Several hours later, with a crack, cracks appeared on the surface of the half-bucket-sized golden egg. Yah! Inside the eggshell was a baby around 1 or 2 years old. Its eyes were bright and its skin gave off a faint golden light. Master! The golden-skinned baby spoke in a childish voice. Zhao Feng paused. The little thieving cat bared its fangs and waved its paws as it jumped next to the golden-skinned baby and started to play with it. Thieving cat, fuck off. The golden-skinned baby's eyes were filled with anger and majesty. A mighty demigod was actually being humiliated and toyed with by a thieving cat. How preposterous! As expected of the blood essence of a demigod. Its state of existence is comparable to a peak sovereign lord right after being reborn. Zhao Feng propped his chin on his hand and clicked his tongue. But thinking about the divine power contained within the demigod's blood, it was reasonable. Furthermore, a portion of the demigod's blood's power was stored in the body of the newborn. Meow. The little thieving cat played with the newborn, which made the latter angry. Thieving cat, let it calm down. Zhao Feng waved his hand. Immediately following that, under the gaze of Zhao Feng and the little thieving cat, the golden-skinned baby started to walk. Soon, the golden-skinned baby had gotten used to its body and could easily walk. Its strength, speed, and intelligence surpassed other babies of the same age. Hee hee. Kuan Yun remnant thought, what should I call you? Zhao Feng curiously pinched the golden-skinned baby's skin. It was very delicate, but the power contained in its body could not be measured by common sense. This baby, even without any cultivation, could easily defeat cultivators below the true spirit realm. I am the demigod Kuan Yun. The golden-skinned infant sat cross-legged, giving off a majestic aura. The charm in his eyes seemed to have experienced the vicissitudes of life. Zhao Feng could vaguely sense a sense of arrogance from him. He seems to have recovered a lot of his memories and instincts after being reborn from a drop of blood. Zhao Feng sized him up. Immediately. He did not allow the golden-skinned baby to say anything. As the golden-skinned baby struggled, he planted the dark heart seed. After all, the demigod Kuan Yun had just revived from a drop of blood and was weak in many aspects. He couldn't fight back at all in front of Zhao Feng. Demigod Kuan Yun, this is according to the agreement you made before you were reborn. Zhao Feng said leisurely. The golden-skinned baby's expression kept on changing, but he didn't say anything in the end. Even though he had been reborn, his intelligence wasn't that of a baby's. He might even be smarter than a normal person. A day or two later, the golden-skinned baby sat cross-legged and started to cultivate. He even asked for primal crystal stones and other resources from Zhao Feng. In just one day's time, wisps of qi of true spirit formed in the demigod Kuan Yun's body and gathered in his dantian. Qi of true spirit. This guy reached the true spirit realm in one step. Furthermore, his cultivation technique seems to be extremely profound. Zhao Feng's mouth dropped open. Once one reached the true spirit realm, they would no longer be mortal. In normal islands, the true spirit realm was a level that many cultivators dreamed of. However, this wasn't difficult for the demigod Kuan Yun. After all, he had been reborn using a drop of blood essence of a demigod. A while later, the golden-skinned baby started to resonate with heaven and earth, and the qi of true spirit within his body became thicker and thicker. At the same time, he was absorbing the pure yuan qi within the high-grade primal crystal stones. From the looks of it, this guy won't have any bottlenecks before he reaches the peak Great Origin Core realm. Zhao Feng murmured. When he completely used the demigod's blood, the immortal spring's wine, and the origin life force, he would reach the limits of the golden-skinned baby's body. After that, he would still have to face the limits of his body. He still had to face the limits of his body, but the difference was that he had the experience of rebirth. Little thieving cat, keep an eye on him. Zhao Feng ordered. Meow meow. The little thieving cat reached out and pulled the golden-skinned baby into the ancient metal ring. Normally, spiritual pets wouldn't be able to survive in an interspatial ring. However, the little thieving cat and the demigod Kuan Yun were existences that exceeded logic. 4 to 5 days later, the demigod Kuan Yun's cultivation reached the true lord rank with the help of large amounts of resources. His body had also swelled to the size of a 3-year-old boy. Only after reaching the true lord rank did his cultivation speed slow down. After all, the higher the origin core realm, the more powerful it was. Hu Xiaofeng let out a long breath. Using the demigod's blood essence as a vessel, the demigod Kuan Yun's cultivation had increased by a terrifying amount. Luckily, the power of the demigod's blood essence would run out sooner or later, and the demigod Kun Yun's cultivation would return to normal. Thousand Darkness Sacred Clan, in a hidden loft. A warm youth sat cross-legged as his true yuan and bloodline circulated. Behind him, 3 Void God Realm Kings merged their true yuan into his body. I've barely recovered to the middle stages of the Great Origin Core Realm. When Luan opened his eyes, and a red glow appeared on his face. His cultivation had almost dropped to the small Origin Core Realm when he self-destructed and charged toward Zhao Feng in the demigod Forgotten Garden. Over the past few days, the 3 Death Spirit Lords worked together to help Wen Luan recover his Yuan Qi and cultivation. Your Highness, with your foundation, you'll be able to recover to your peak in just a few months with our help. One of the Death Spirit Lords said. Right at this moment, Wen Luan suddenly took out a token of death. It's news from Master. A look of joy appeared on the warm youth's face. Has the Emperor finally come out of seclusion? The Emperor woke up a year ago, but for some reason, he's been in seclusion for the past year. One of the Death Spirit Lords said. At the same time, on the other side of the limitless ocean, within an ancient palace in the dark abyss, an ancient and gloomy great emperor slowly stood up like a blurry shadow. Instantly, a will of death that could pierce through heaven and earth swept across tens of thousands of miles of the void ocean. The souls of countless beings and almighty beings trembled. It's about time. The success rate of the eye-stealing forbidden technique has increased by 10 times. It even has a 30 to 40% chance of success against the embryonic god's eye. The Emperor of Death murmured. Chapter 674. Mystic True Sacred Clan, Emperor Palace. Zhao Feng sat cross-legged and watched the growth of the child Kun Yun. Suddenly, his heart went cold as an aura of danger spread from the depths of his soul. Pursuit of death. Zhao Feng hiccuped. This feeling of danger wasn't something that normal death guards or death spirit lords could give him. In the depths of his soul, the aura of the Eye of Death gave off a faint ripple that resonated with a distant place. Zhao Feng's expression changed as he guessed something. Up until now, the 4 Death Spirit Lords and the 36 Death Guards hadn't completed their mission. The disciple of the Emperor of Death had almost died in the demigod Forgotten Garden. Under this situation, the Emperor of Death might personally take action. I might not even be able to beat the disciple of the Emperor of Death in a one-on-one fight, let alone the ancient Emperor of Death. Zhao Feng took a deep breath. In the demigod Forgotten Garden, he teamed up with Nan Gongsheng and used the Eye of Heaven, but they still weren't able to kill Wen Luan. Wen Luan's strength was still restricted in the demigod Forgotten Garden. Even then, if Zhao Feng had fought him one-on-one back then, he might have lost. The bloodline of the 10,000 ancient races was ranked 100, and its battle power was extraordinary. The most important thing right now is to increase my strength and weaken the intent of the Eyes of Death. Zhao Feng had a rough idea in his heart. As long as Emperor Duanmu was still here, the Emperor of Death wouldn't be able to threaten Zhao Feng. After all, this was the territory of the true martial sacred land, and the Emperor of Death was an outsider. Furthermore, emperors weren't truly unrivaled existences in the spiritual sacred land. Hu Zhaofeng closed his eyes and circulated the 10,000 divine thoughts technique, and the contents of the dark eye secret technique appeared in his mind. Among them, Zhaofeng was extremely satisfied with the effects of the 10,000 divine thoughts technique. It allowed his Tao of the soul to reach a higher level. This technique didn't just help him break through to the void god realm, it also helped Zhaofeng dissolve the intent of the Eyes of Death. Soul Dimension, Zhao Feng's mental energy intent turned into almost 100 tentacles that drilled into the depths of his soul and started to grind away the intent of the Eyes of Death. This intent wasn't just Emperor level, it also came from the Eye of Death. The Emperor of Death was proficient in the Tao of Soul and the Tao of Death. Even Emperor Duanmu didn't dare to attack the aura he left behind in fear of accidentally injuring Zhaofeng. Zhao Feng could only rely on himself to slowly whittle away the intent of the Eye of Death. Zhao Feng of Soul. The intent left behind by the Eye of Death was like a dark mark of the Eye of Death. It was in the shape of a shadow, similar to Zhao Feng's Eye of Heaven. Feng of Tao Energy Qin. Of Qin. Intent. Of Feng again of Qin of Feng of God. Heaven. Qin Soul Heaven. Of Feng of Heaven. Of Realm of God of Realm of Heaven. The 10,000 Divine Thoughts technique allowed Zhao Feng's Tao of the Soul to reach a whole new level. He condensed his mental energy into the shape of a blade and used it with the power of his eye flame to slowly whittle away that intent. During this process, Zhao Feng's eye bloodline power was quickly expended. He would then sit down to recover after using it. After recovering, Zhao Feng continued to grind away at the intent. He did this over and over again. Zhao Feng's mastery of the 10,000 Divine Thoughts technique increased day by day. Several days later, unfortunately, the level of this intent of death is too high, and it's being used up too slowly. Maybe when my soul reaches the level of a king, my God's eye will change and I'll be able to speed it up. Zhao Feng let out a deep sigh. At this moment, within the dimension of Zhao Feng's left eye, the lake of eye bloodline power had reached a radius of 100 yards. A wave of tiredness spread from the God's eye to his entire body. Zhao Feng tried to fight against this wave of tiredness. According to past experience, once Zhao Feng couldn't fight against tiredness, he would enter a deep sleep and the God's spiritual eye would evolve. He needed to wait for his master and Yufei to return before entering a deep sleep. Zhao Feng didn't circulate the 10,000 Divine Thoughts technique. He found that cultivating this technique would speed up the evolution of the God's spiritual eye. Days passed by one after another. After the child Kun Yun reached the true Lord rank, its cultivation was still increasing. Every few days, the golden-skinned child would find Zhao Feng and ask for some treasures. Luckily, Zhao Feng had a lot of resources. Otherwise, he would be under a lot of pressure if he had to provide resources for 3 people. Zhao Feng, the little thieving cat, and the child Kun Yun all needed a large amount of resources. Of these, the little thieving cat ate the most treasures and resources. Luckily, the cat had gone through thick and thin with Zhao Feng and never disappointed him. On this day, the child Kun Yun's cultivation was close to the origin core realm, and it asked for some resources from Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng suddenly sensed something. Following this, a magnificent force descended upon Martial Emperor Duanmu's residence. Shua. Zhao Feng waved his hand and let the child Kun Yun enter the palace. Emperor rank. This aura is close to the mystic light realm. The child Kun Yun murmured as he concealed his aura and became obedient. At the current stage, only Zhao Feng and the little thieving cat knew about Kun Yun's blood rebirth. If the world knew about the revival of a demigod, it would cause an uproar. At that time, the child Kun Yun might even face destruction. Master. Zhao Feng strode out of the secret hall and into the courtyard of the estate. Right at this moment, a stalwart man with hair as white as snow was surrounded by a green lotus light, appearing otherworldly and otherworldly. When the ancient martial monarch arrived at the sacred mountain, many experts in the sect sensed it, causing their hearts to sink. Big brother Zhao Feng. Beside Duanmu Qing, there was a young lady in a purple dress who was as elegant as a celestial being. The girl in purple was extremely beautiful. Her skin was as white as jade and glittered. It was as if she wasn't made of flesh and blood, but a perfect piece of jade. Yufei. Zhao Feng revealed a joyful expression. Even the tiredness in his heart was dispelled. He couldn't help but smile. He thought back to when he used the mermaid tears in the mermaid country. When he was young. She was a slender and elegant beauty. She was like a girl next door. Her bright, sparkling eyes were filled with determination. It was the purple-robed figure who had been silently paying attention to him and chasing after him. After a long time apart. Those hazy eyes that were crying tears of joy, the warm and soft hug, the familiar fragrance, it was so clear. In front of him, this celestial-like girl in purple was no longer immature and came from the source of his memories. The two looked at each other. The hazy mist in Zhao Yufei's clear eyes was unable to conceal her bright happiness and faint feelings of embarrassment. Especially. The man in her heart looked at her with a different calmness. It seemed to be similar to the love and passion other men had for her, but there were no distracting thoughts. When their eyes met, the two understood a lot. At this moment, a look was better than 1,000 words. Especially when it came to love, Zhao Feng was as dull and passive as he had been for 1,000 years. The corners of Zhao Yufei's eyes turned red. While she was happy, she also wanted to cry. Zhao Feng's vision blurred as he felt a soft and beautiful body leap into his embrace. Her tears moistened his cheeks. The familiar fragrance was like the warmth of the girl next door. That kind of beautiful feeling was like the sadness and sorrow in the mermaid's tears, washing away the beautiful and sweet love. Zhao Feng's heart became clear and the mermaid tears' effect merged with his own life experience. Yu Fei. Zhao Feng, who rarely took the initiative, hugged Zhao Yufei tightly. He didn't know how to speak or how to describe it. He just instinctively hugged the girl in front of him. From his understanding of the mermaid's tears to his desire to see it this time. Zhao Feng understood everything about emotions, including the hazy and immature feelings of his youth. Until Emperor Duanmu coughed. The two seemed to wake up from a dream and their faces blushed. A while later. The three sat down in a hall. Zhao Feng sized up Zhao Yufei and was shocked. Zhao Yufei had an aura similar to Meng Shi, Wen Luan, and Jiang Fan. It was the bloodline aura of the 10,000 ancient races. Not only that. The pressure from Zhao Yufei's aura was even greater than Wen Luan's. What was even more incredible was that Zhao Yufei's cultivation was at the Great Origin Core realm, but her true yuan wasn't any weaker than a king. Brother Zhao Feng, my bloodline has truly awakened. With Brother Duanmu's help, I've successfully inherited the Purple Saint ruins and refined it into my own little heaven and earth. Zhao Yufei's pretty face was brimming with joy, and she looked somewhat pleased with herself. Little heaven and earth? Zhao Feng was slightly surprised. Zhao Yufei didn't have the cultivation of a king, so how could she have her own little heaven and earth? Zhao Feng, we meet again. A familiar voice sounded from Zhao Yufei. When a hazy purple light covered the entire room. In the next instant, Zhao Feng and company entered a familiar space. The aura of the Purple Saint ruins, but it's dozens of times stronger. Zhao Feng was in a mysterious canyon and next to him was the towering tree Yao. The space in front of him was the Purple Saint ruins. The difference was, this little heaven and earth was only 10 miles wide, but it was a few hundred times smaller than before. Zhao Feng finally understood why Duanmu Qing had been gone for so long. Being the emperor of a sacred land, Duanmu Qing could use the teleportation array and arrive at the Tianlu Islands in a short while. After Duanmu Qing arrived at the Tianlu Islands, he punished the 3 sections. The kings of the 3 sects all admitted their wrongs. After that, Duanmu Qing helped Zhao Yufei refine the Purple Saint ruins and merged the Purple Saint partial spirit into her little heaven and earth. And now, the Purple Saint partial spirit had become a part of Zhao Yufei's little heaven and earth. Otherwise, Zhao Yufei wouldn't have her own little heaven and earth. This way. Not only did Zhao Yufei inherit the Purple Saint inheritance, she also preserved the Purple Saint partial spirit. For this, Emperor Duanmu had paid a heavy price and hadn't returned for several months. Shua. Duanmu Qing and company returned to the palace. Yufei, these are mermaid tears and illusion god wine. Zhao Feng had a tired expression on his face as he reluctantly handed the 2 treasures to Zhao Yufei. Illusion god wine. Zhao Yufei still didn't know the value of these two items. Emperor Duanmu was shocked. You actually obtained the illusion god wine? These two items are perfect for Yufei. After all, she has the bloodline of the spiritual race and her true yuan cultivation surpasses mental energy. Chapter 675. Zhao Yufei didn't know the value of the illusion god wine, but there was no way Duanmu Qing didn't. Not only that. He knew the situation in the demigod Forgotten Garden extremely well. The difficulty of obtaining the illusion god wine wasn't just a little bit high. The genius from a few thousand years ago had only succeeded because of luck. Zhao Feng, don't tell me you used that method to obtain the illusion god wine from the mermaid princess. Duanmu Qing inspected Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng's state of existence was comparable to a king, and he had formed half-step king intent. Mermaid princess. Zhao Yufei's eyebrows furrowed as she harumphed, as if she was unhappy. No, I kidnapped the mermaid princess. Zhao Feng gave a simple explanation. Duanmu Qing and Zhao Yufei were both stunned after hearing how Zhao Feng conquered the mermaid kingdom. Zhao Yufei was even more worried after hearing this. Zhao Feng's courage wasn't just big. He used this method to fight against a void god realm king and obtain the illusion god wine and immortal springs wine. Duanmu Qing praised in his heart. Zhao Feng was extremely calm throughout the entire process. One could imagine that he didn't just have courage, he also had a strong mind and calmness. Zhao Feng, thank you for leaving me such a precious wine. The purple Saint Partial Spirit's voice sounded. Now. She and Zhao Yufei's little heaven and earth had become one, and she was a powerful mental energy shield. With Duanmu Qing's help, the purple Saint Partial Spirit had recovered to the level of a king. Senior helped me a lot in the purple Saint ruins. This illusion god wine is nothing compared to you. Zhao Feng said. Back then, the 2 times he entered the purple Saint ruins made Zhao Feng's strength soar. Without the purple Saint ruins, Zhao Feng wouldn't be here today. Oh right, master, what race did you say my bloodline is? Zhao Feng suddenly asked. Spiritual race. This time, it was the purple Saint Partial Spirit who answered. The Astrals. Zhao Feng's body and mind shook as he sucked in a breath of cold air. He had seen the 10,000 ancient races ranking, so he knew how terrifying the spirit race was. Spiritual race, ranked 19th on the 10,000 ancient races board. It was unimaginable. Zhao Yufei's bloodline was ranked in the top 20 of the 10,000 ancient races. Spirit race, one of the primordial mythological races. They are born with the innate spirit source body, a spiritual body that surpasses the physical body of flesh and blood. They feed on the essence of the world. In terms of compatibility with heaven and earth yuan qi, it was number 1 among all races. The spirit race possessed the battle prowess of a king at adulthood. His cultivation speed is unparalleled. Zhao Feng recalled the characteristics of the spiriters. The Astrals were a race that was close to perfection. The Astrals possessed spiritual bodies, which surpassed the limits of normal living beings. For example, the light race, which was ranked 7th on the 10,000 ancient races board, was the embodiment of light and fed on time. As for the spirit tribe, they were the embodiment of the world's spirits and were inseparable from the world's origin energy. After Yufei awakened the true bloodline of the spirit race, she has no bottlenecks below the void god realm. If her cultivation was high enough, she would have become a king already. Duanmu Qing sighed. The top 100 bloodlines of the 10,000 ancient races were destined to be blessed by the heavens. The illusion god wine that Zhao Feng brought was exactly what Zhao Yufei needed. One had to know that. The true yuan within Zhao Yufei's body had already broken through the barrier of cultivation and reached the void god realm. After that, Zhao Feng briefly told him what happened in the demigod Forgotten Garden. Duanmu Qing's expression changed when he heard about the demigod's blood. However, Zhao Feng had kept the fact that he had obtained the demigod's blood a secret. It wasn't because of the value of the demigod's blood itself, but because the demigod revival plan was too shocking. A while later, Zhao Yufei pulled Zhao Feng's hand and walked quickly like a fairy. Zhao Feng's expression was filled with exhaustion. Under the impact of the waves of exhaustion, he had already reached his limit. At this moment, Zhao Yufei looked at him seriously. "Brother Zhao Feng, what's with the fiancé you mentioned last time? Did you find her?" Fiancé? Zhao Feng felt awkward. In his mind, a beautiful face that seemed to be filled with resentment, a beautiful figure that was tranquil like a celestial being in a painting appeared. "Brother Zhao Feng, you have to answer me seriously." Zhao Yufei had a serious look on her face. At this moment, she was nervous and apprehensive. She could not tolerate the fact that the man she loved had fallen in love with another woman at the same time. Although, in this world, it was very normal for powerful men to marry several wives and concubines. Zhao Yufei's eyelashes fluttered and her clear eyes were misty. She looked at Zhao Feng seriously, waiting for his answer. She had already made up her mind. If Zhao Feng still chose to fall in love with another woman, she would have no choice but to withdraw and focus all her efforts on her own destiny. At the same time, Zhao Yufei wasn't the only one waiting for Zhao Feng's answer. The Purple Saint Partial Spirit was also waiting for him. The Purple Saint Partial Spirit also placed great importance on this matter. However, right at this moment, Zhao Feng closed his eyes in exhaustion and fell into a deep sleep. "Brother Zhao Feng, what's wrong?" Zhao Yufei's expression changed dramatically as she tightly hugged Zhao Feng. She found that there were more faint purple strands in Zhao Feng's hair. His God's Eye has probably entered a new awakening stage, the Purple Saint Partial Spirit said. As the God's Eye continued to awaken, it would become more compatible with Zhao Feng and its source of power would become stronger. Furthermore, the chances of outsiders stealing the God's Eye would become lower and lower. Zhao Yufei stomped her foot. She suspected that Zhao Feng was purposely sleeping at this time to avoid the problem. Meow meow. The little thieving cat jumped onto Zhao Feng's shoulder. Every time Zhao Feng's God's Eye evolved, the little thieving cat would be the one protecting him. It could be said that the little thieving cat had grown up with Zhao Feng. Meow meow. The little thieving cat gestured. It didn't dislike Zhao Yufei. Zhao Yufei soon understood what it meant and quickly placed Zhao Feng in the secret hall. Meow. The little thieving cat closed the door and sat on its master. Of course, the child demigod needed resources to cultivate in the ancient metal ring. Since its master wasn't here, the little thieving cat was responsible for it. Zhao Feng seems to have entered a certain state. The child demigod could feel Zhao Feng's state through the dark heart seal. He was overjoyed. Using this chance, he might be able to get more treasures from the thieving cat. If Zhao Feng was asleep for a long time, he might be able to break free from the dark heart seal after merging with the demigod intent and becoming a king. After all, Zhao Feng shouldn't be able to take care of the dark heart seal while he was asleep. However, the child demigod's plan didn't work. In the following period of time, he was restricted by the little thieving cat. The child demigod obviously wanted to resist. He was a demigod. How could he let a cat step on his head? Paw! Paw! The child demigod was slapped by the little thieving cat whenever he disobeyed, making him dizzy. Preposterous. The child demigod wasn't its match and was instead humiliated. What race is this cat? The child demigod felt extremely frustrated. He had the memories and instincts of a demigod, but he couldn't see through this cat. However, this cat's ability wasn't just monstrous, it could see through his intentions time and time again. Some of the abilities in the demigod's memories were naturally extraordinary. However, the child demigod used everything he had, but he was still defeated by the little thieving cat. Every time the cat bullied him, it would reveal a mocking expression and ignore his identity as a demigod. Once I recover my true strength, I'll torture all kinds of cats to death. The child demigod remembered this grudge in his heart. The most important thing right now was, he still needed to grow, so he couldn't offend this cat. Slowly, he would reveal a fawning expression every time he faced the little thieving cat, and he would even massage its shoulders and back. The little thieving cat nodded its head in satisfaction. Just like that. The child demigod endured the humiliation and became the little thieving cat's lackey. Time flew by quickly. In the blink of an eye, 2 months passed. The child demigod hid in the ancient metal ring and didn't dare to come out. 2 months passed. His cultivation recovered at a terrifying rate and reached the level of a sovereign lord. My cultivation has already caught up to Xiaofeng. The child demigod felt smug. As his cultivation increased, more of the demigod's memories and instincts were awakened. In terms of strength, the child demigod was confident that he could defeat the geniuses of the true martial sacred land. Of course, that was excluding the monstrous geniuses like Nan Gongsheng and Xiaofeng. However, the only thing that made the child demigod depressed was that his body had stopped growing at the age of 2 or 3 years old. According to normal logic, he had revived from a drop of blood, not from his mother's womb. With the demigod's blood, he should be able to quickly grow into an adult. Why is it like this? The child demigod was extremely frustrated and was about to go crazy. Meow meow. The little thieving cat had a playful expression as it waved its paws. What? Immortal Springs wine. An eternal beauty grass. The child demigod roared as he ran around in the ancient metal ring. If it was just the Immortal Springs wine, it would be fine since it could slow down one's aging. However, with the addition of the Eternal Beauty Grass, it was a completely different story. The Eternal Beauty Grass could maintain one's youthful appearance, body functions, and state of being at a constant state. If one was 18 years old and used the Eternal Beauty Grass, as long as their body didn't age, they would maintain their appearance and state of being 18 years old. Adding on the Immortal Springs wine, the effect of the Eternal Beauty Grass was countless times stronger. Both the Immortal Springs wine and the Eternal Beauty Grass were legendary items. The former could increase one's lifespan by 1,000 years. The latter could maintain one's youthful appearance. For some women, this was the perfect combination that they could only dream of. However, the child demigod had met the wrong person at the wrong time and used these 2 items. The Immortal Springs wine and Eternal Beauty Grass are both heaven-defying items from the god realm. It'll be very hard to get rid of their effects before becoming a sacred lord. The child demigod's eyes twinkled as he analyzed. After reaching this conclusion, he went berserk once more. He hated the little thieving cat to the bone. The Eternal Beauty Grass was definitely something that the little thieving cat had mixed in with other resources for him to use. This grass came from the 100-flower garden in the demigod Forgotten Garden. Even Xiaofeng didn't realize its power when he first obtained it. I can't take it anymore. The child demigod was enraged and jumped out of the ancient metal ring. He also had the ability to travel through space. Paw! The little thieving cat slapped the child demigod's face and made him dizzy. However, the child demigod's body and bloodline were strong, so he took the attack and leapt toward the little thieving cat once more. Just as they were about to fight, the child demigod and the little thieving cat were about to start fighting. The sleeping Xiaofeng suddenly flipped around, and his faint purple hair blew in the wind. Chapter 676. In the past 2 months, Xiaofeng's body moved for the first time in his sleep. That head of blue hair had completely evolved into a light purple color. It was ethereal like a dream, but it also had a kind of evil beauty that was enough to make many women envious. His faint purple hair blew without any wind, and it radiated an aura that went straight into the soul. This soul aura was calm and unfathomable. The child demigod and the little thieving cat both jumped. What a powerful soul aura! The heart of the child demigod shook, and he felt uneasy. He was stunned. Zhao Feng was still asleep, but he already radiated such a strong soul aura. This soul aura was even stronger than normal kings. Meow. The little thieving cat stroked its whiskers with one paw and started to think. In the past 2 months, Zhao Feng hadn't moved, meaning that he was in a deep sleep. Right now, Zhao Feng's sudden movement wasn't a coincidence. It was most likely because the god's spiritual eye had already completed its evolution and was slowly recovering from its deep sleep. As expected, for the next few days, Zhao Feng's body would occasionally move in his sleep. The profound, unfathomable soul aura around him grew stronger and stronger. Within the dimension of his left eye, Zhao Feng's consciousness had recovered long ago, and he watched the changes in the blue eye bloodline lake. At the start, waves of purple light appeared in the lake of eye bloodline power. As time passed, a faint purple mist started to appear on the surface of the blue eye bloodline lake. Zhao Feng could feel that this faint purple mist contained pure soul power, and it was formed by the evolution of the eye bloodline lake. It was still evolving. The faint purple mist became thicker and thicker. This faint purple mist is similar to the limitless ocean. Zhao Feng murmured. The faint purple mist started to expand with the blue lake as the center. 100 yards, 200 yards, 1,000 yards, Zhao Feng personally witnessed the expansion of the violet sea of mist. Every time the purple mist expanded, his soul strength would grow a bit stronger. The expansion of the purple mist made Zhao Feng feel stronger. After an unknown period of time, the purple mist sea expanded to 700 or 800 feet, nearing 900 feet, 10,000 feet. However, the lake of eye power didn't disappear. The two fused with each other and could even be converted into one another. The eye force lake was at the center of the purple mist. At this point, the left eye's transformation wasn't over. The dimension of his left eye was pitch black. The purple fog sea floated within, expanding to 8,000 or 9,000 feet, even 10,000 feet. The interior of the sea of fog seemed to be an independent soul space. Soul Sea World. Zhao Feng vaguely felt a trace of summoning. This was his soul world, and it was as vast as the sea. Such a powerful soul power had already far surpassed most experts in the world. Only by becoming a king would one's soul undergo a massive transformation, and only then would one be able to reach this level. In the Soul Sea world, the purple mist sea was the boundary. Below, the blue eye bloodline lake was the origin of the entire Soul Sea. Gurgle. The blue lake surged with eye bloodline power and gave birth to a powerful aura. Hu. Waves of azure wind formed in the sky above the Soul Sea world. This was a type of soul eye bloodline power. Wind eye bloodline power. Zhao Feng could sense that this was the element of eye bloodline power that he obtained when he switched to azure. And now, this wind eye bloodline power had also evolved in the Soul Sea world. The Soul Sea world had evolved into wind. Immediately afterward, scarlet and purple clouds of lightning appeared in the sky. Lightning eye bloodline power. Zhao Feng revealed a weird expression. In the past, the dimension of his left eye didn't have any eye bloodline power of lightning, it was formed through the wind lightning pill flame in his dantian. However, now, the Soul Sea world had formed this eye bloodline power. Wind. Water. Lightning, Zhao Feng couldn't help but think. The scarlet and purple clouds of lightning seemed to be related to the purple destruction wind lightning and scarlet destruction wind lightning that Zhao Feng cultivated. Could it be that the eye bloodline power in the Soul Sea world is related to the element of my technique? Zhao Feng had a guess. When the god's spiritual eye first evolved, it had the element of wind. At that time, it wasn't very obvious. Zhao Feng remembered that lightly floating fairy, which he first cultivated, was also related to wind. Of course. Apart from being related to himself, the god's spiritual eye's mutation was also random and uncontrollable. The Soul Sea world was a patch of faint purple hazy, faintly discernible like a dream. The blue lake corresponded to ice water. The scarlet and purple clouds corresponded to the Tao of lightning. The azure wind corresponded to the wind. In the air of the Soul Sea, the azure wind and scarlet and purple clouds intertwined with one another. The blue lake was immeasurably deep. The mysterious whirlpool in the lake led to the ancient dream realm. Zhao Feng's god's spiritual eye had finally formed its own system. At this moment, Zhao Feng only waited for the Soul Sea world to stabilize. He slowly woke up from his deep sleep and could faintly sense the situation outside. Within the secret hall, the child demigod was much more well-behaved. The sense of danger from the dark heart seed suddenly became stronger. Zhao Feng's soul strength was immeasurable, and adding on his soul elemental eye bloodline, it was immeasurable. Normally speaking, breaking through from the origin core realm to the void god realm was a qualitative change. However, Zhao Feng's god's spiritual eye's mutation completed this process. Within the emperor's palace, Zhao Feng and the child demigod were both quickly growing. Even the little thieving cat had devoured an ocean of resources, several times more than the child demigod. However, it was hard to see how strong the little thieving cat really was. At the same time, in the true martial sacred land, Zhao Yufei had made significant progress in her cultivation in the new environment. She had the bloodline of the spiritual race, and the purple saint partial spirit's soul power and Emperor Duanmu's teachings had merged into her little world. 1 month ago, she drank the god of illusion wine several times and focused on comprehending it. Half a month ago, Zhao Yufei had formed half-step king intent, which made up for her weakness and increased her strength. In order to train Zhao Yufei, Emperor Duanmu purposely let her spar with the geniuses of the sacred land. Within the mystic true sacred clan, Qin Yilin, Jiang Fan, senior martial brother Nan, and some other core disciples sparred with Zhao Yufei. In the end, the top 5 geniuses of the sacred clan all lost to Zhao Yufei. Zhao Yufei had formed half-step king intent, and her true yuan had reached the level of a king. Even Jiang Fan, who was on the 10,000 ancient races, could only last 2 or 3 moves against Zhao Yufei. Jiang Fan's bloodline was ranked in the hundreds. Zhao Yufei's bloodline was ranked in the top 20. Yufei, with your current strength, only Nan Gongsheng, Meng Shi, and Zhao Feng can be your match. Emperor Duanmu smiled and said. Over the past few days, Zhao Yufei had almost swept through all the disciples of the sacred clan. Apart from the sleeping Zhao Feng and Nan Gongsheng, who had become a king, no one fought her. Master, I will fulfill your wish and return to the continent zone to rebuild the Duanmu family. Zhao Yufei clenched her fists and had a determined gaze. Within her little world, the purple saint partial spirit said, as a legendary bloodline that's ranked in the top 20 of the 10,000 ancient races, I believe that the true martial sacred land is just a transfer station for you. On the second day, Zhao Yufei challenged the top genius of the sacred land, Nan Gongsheng. Chapter 677. Main Spiritual Peak. Mystic True Sacred Clan Mountain Gate. A grand arena was located at the top of the main spiritual peak. This arena was known as the True King Arena. It was famous in the Glory sect for tens of thousands of years. In Glory sect, normal experts and core disciples didn't have the right to spar on the True King stage. Because, this was a battle between Void God Realm kings. But today, the morning glow was shining. On the ancient True King stage, 2 figures faced each other. One of the dark-clothed young men stood with his hands behind his back, and he emanated a towering arrogance. His eyes were bright like stars, and his entire body was coiled with the mighty energy of a king that looked down upon the world. Looking at it with the naked eye, it looked like a dazzling silver ball of nothingness, like the light of the gods. He was Nan Gongsheng. He was the publicly acknowledged #1 genius of the true martial Holy Land. Zhe, apart from Meng Shi, who in the same generation of the sacred land can fight against Nan Gongsheng? Nan Gongsheng has become a king. Even Meng Shi and Zhao Feng probably won't be able to last 10 moves against him. Many true disciples were gathered around the arena. On the other side of the true king's stage, it was a young girl in a violet dress that was elegant like a celestial. She was peerlessly beautiful, and her skin was like snow-white jade that was suffused with a faint luster. In terms of appearance, only Meng Shi of the Thousand Darkness Sacred Sect could be compared to her in the entire true martial sacred land. The gazes of some male disciples descended onto the young woman, and besides feeling shocked, they felt ashamed of their inferiority. She is that Zhao Yufei. It's hard to imagine that senior brother Chen, senior brother Nan, and Jiang Fan were all defeated by her. Everyone discussed in low voices. Although, no one thought that Zhao Yufei had much chance of winning. However, Zhao Yufei's talent and potential were enough to show disdain for her peers to come this far. In terms of age, Zhao Yufei was much younger than Nan Gongsheng. This battle attracted a lot of attention. There were even kings and emperors near the true king stage. Amongst them, Emperor Duanmu and Nan Gongsheng's master, Emperor Mi Kong, were also present. I never thought that my first battle after becoming a king wouldn't be against Zhao Feng, nor would it be against Meng Shi. It would be against a nameless girl. Nan Gongsheng murmured in a self-mocking tone. With his title as the top genius of the sacred land and his cultivation as a void god realm king, he disdained fighting with geniuses of the same generation. Otherwise, he would be suspected of bullying the weak. After all, after becoming a king, Nan Gongsheng would become part of the upper echelon of the sacred clan and leave the ranks of disciples. Originally, Nan Gongsheng didn't plan on fighting. However, Emperor Duanmu had discussed it with his master, Emperor Mi Kong, on the idea of this battle. It was said that the mysterious woman came from the continent zone, and was closely related to martial monarch Duanmu. Begin. Under the signal of the two martial monarchs, the battle on the true emperor's stage finally began. Everyone's attention was focused on the two, but they did not immediately make a move. It doesn't matter how strong your bloodline and inheritance are. Those who haven't reached the void god realm are ants in the eyes of kings. Nan Gongsheng stood with his hands behind his back and released a thought. Boom! In that instant, the magnificent power of a king shook the soul dimension, and the nearby Yuan Qi seemed to freeze. As long as he wanted to, Nan Gongsheng could destroy the Broken Moon clan or the main headquarters of the Iron Blood religion with just a thought. This was king intent. Nan Gongsheng seemed to merge into the limitless universe. His every action contained limitless power that could pierce through both the physical and soul dimension. Half of the true emperor's stage was surrounded by a layer of silver light. That dark silver ethereal light had space power Upanishad. It was like a sky curtain that permeated the void. His magnificent power has already formed the outline of a spatial domain. Even a half-step king's intent will be suppressed, and their physical body will be restricted by the domain. They won't be able to fight back. There were several kings amongst the spectators. Emperor Mi Kong was a silver-haired elder. He had a smug smile on his face as he glanced at Emperor Duanmu. As expected of Nan Gongsheng. He just became a king not long ago, but his strength isn't any weaker than some of the older kings. Duanmu Qing sighed. It was just a thought, yet it had such a powerful force. If it was Zhao Feng or Meng Shi from before, they would have been completely suppressed and wouldn't have been able to fight back. Yufei, his king intent contains the power of space. The purple Saint Partial Spirit's voice sounded in Zhao Yufei's mind. Under the pressure of the magnificent power and space intent, Zhao Yufei's pretty face blushed, but she didn't show any signs of retreat or weakness. On the contrary, she even raised her head slightly. You're very strong, but I won't lose. Nan Gongsheng was surprised. His magnificent power was like a stone sinking into the ocean when it landed on Zhao Yufei. It was as if she had fallen into another world. No wonder she dares to challenge a king. A light flashed in Emperor Mi Kong's silver eyes and he was shocked. Some of the kings present also saw what was going on. Zhao Yufei had refined a little world, so she wasn't scared of the magnificent power of heaven and earth. When the young woman in a violet dress emanated a layer of violet crystalline light, and her imposing aura was vast as it charged into the silver barrier in the surroundings. How is this possible? Nan Gongsheng's figure shook slightly. The spatial domain that he had created with his magnificent power was instantly shattered by the opponent's true yuan. The void god realm was split into kings and emperors. When a king reached a certain level, they could create a spatial domain, but it wasn't a physical dimension. Monarchs, on the other hand, were even stronger. They were able to materialize their spatial domains into a real dimension, or even a small world. Nan Gongsheng had just become a king not long ago. Because he specialized in the laws of space and had the spatial spiritual body, he was able to barely create a spatial domain. Normal half-step kings wouldn't be able to fight back against the spatial domain. However, a burst of true essence burst forth from Zhao Yufei's body, its power shocking the heavens, directly shaking away the space domain power around her. What powerful true yuan! Some of the kings present revealed shocked expressions. She hasn't formed king intent, but she's broken through the barrier of cultivation and has true yuan comparable to a king. Emperor Mi Kong was bewildered. Right at this moment, Nan Gongsheng and Zhao Yufei attacked at the same time. A wave of profound silver descended from the sky, accompanied by an astonishing might, and pressed down on Zhao Yufei. This power was enough to destroy a normal city. Purple Heaven Sacred Technique. Zhao Yufei exclaimed as she waved her hand. Millions of beams of purple light, each as sharp as a sword and as agile as a fish, formed a purple storm that swept toward Nan Gongsheng. Boom! Boom! The two king-level powers clashed on the true king stage, creating a magnificent scene. Her power can actually fight against my king power. Nan Gongsheng had a solemn expression. He finally stopped underestimating her. The legendary continent zone was indeed not simple, it surpassed the true martial sacred land. Shua! Nan Gongsheng's figure disappeared. In the next instant, whoosh! A wave of silver light containing a forbidden aura charged toward Zhao Yufei from the side. It was too fast. Nan Gongsheng's spatial techniques and speed had reached a whole new level. Spatial techniques. Zhao Yufei's heart jumped. Her spiritual race bloodline was extremely sensitive to the heaven-earth yuan qi, and it was one with her. Come! Zhao Yufei opened her hand, and a faint amethyst whirlpool appeared. It suddenly expanded by 100 feet, and swallowed the dark silver light. A mocking smile appeared on Nan Gongsheng's face. Shoo! Boom! As the silver light within the purple crystal whirlpool exploded, it contained a power that could break through the limits of space. The power of the spatial technique was about to land on Zhao Yufei. Shua! Only a dazzling purple shadow was left behind, and it exploded and annihilated along with the mysterious silver light spot. Next, a bright purple light flashed through the air and smashed toward Nan Gongsheng with terrifying power. From afar, one could only see a bright purple meteor flying toward Nan Gongsheng. Not good. Nan Gongsheng felt a sense of danger, and with a flash of silver light, he appeared dozens of meters away. Boom! The bright purple meteor landed where Nan Gongsheng was originally standing, and waves of purple flames engulfed the air there. Nan Gongsheng was almost hit by the purple meteor. When the flames of the purple meteor receded, revealing Zhao Yufei's beautiful figure amidst the flowing light. Purple Heaven Sacred Technique. What's her relationship with the Purple Night Sacred Lord? Emperor Mi Kong stared at Zhao Yufei and couldn't help but take a deep breath. He was also an ancient emperor, and he had even seen the Purple Night Sacred Lord in action a long time ago. In that era, the Purple Night Sacred Lord's name shook the 10,000 clans of the zone, and no one was his match. That's right, she's the inheritor of the Purple Knight Sacred Lord. She also has the bloodline of the 10,000 ancient races. Emperor Duanmu's mouth curled up. Great Emperor Mekong's expression made him feel good. It didn't matter who won. Nan Gongsheng was a king, and he had the spatial spiritual body and the heaven's spiritual body. He was the #1 genius of the sacred land. On the other hand, Zhao Yufei's age and cultivation were both lower than Nan Gongsheng's. Mystic spatial crack. With a flash of silver, Nan Gongsheng appeared behind Zhao Yufei. A silver streak of light extended through space and radiated a forbidden spatial power. At this instant, the two were inches apart. Nan Gongsheng could even smell the fragrance from Zhao Yufei's body. Shua! The mystic spatial splitter struck Zhao Yufei like a bolt of lightning. Nan Gongsheng circulated his magnificent power to the maximum and locked onto Zhao Yufei with a spatial technique. Zhao Yufei couldn't dodge at all. However, she did not plan to dodge. Her entire body suddenly glowed with sparkling light, as if she had transformed into a goddess made of ice and jade, swaying with a layer of purple light. Ding! The mystic spatial crack landed on Zhao Yufei, and it seemed to merge into a layer of liquid crystal. How is this possible? Nan Gongsheng's eyes focused as he exclaimed in his heart. The scene before them left the spectators dumbfounded. There were no signs of Zhao Yufei using a secret technique, but her body had surpassed the limits of flesh and blood. Her state was similar to Zhao Feng's water spirit divine change. On the other hand, Zhao Feng had to pay a huge price to use a secret technique to reach this state. On the other hand, Zhao Yufei's state seemed to be instinctive. This bloodline inheritance, could it be the spiritual race of the 10,000 ancient races? Some of the spectating kings exclaimed in shock. One had to know, Nan Gongsheng's attack was a unique spatial attack, but it wasn't able to injure Zhao Yufei at all. Spiritual race. This bloodline is definitely from the spiritual race. Emperor Mekong took a deep breath and couldn't hide the shock in his eyes. The spiritual race was ranked 19th among the 10,000 ancient races. This was a legendary bloodline that reigned supreme over the other races. When the crack on Zhao Yufei's flawless purple body quickly healed, and there wasn't even a drop of blood. Chapter 678. With the bloodline of the spiritual race, Zhao Yufei was able to easily block Nan Gongsheng's attack. Even the mystic spatial crack can't injure her at all. Nan Gongsheng was slightly dazed. Even the warm youth Wen Luoan would be injured if he took the mystic spatial crack head-on. However, the bloodlines of the 10,000 ancient races were ranked before and after. Wen Luoan was ranked in the top 100, which was already heaven-defying. Furthermore, the spiritual race was ranked in the top 20 of the 10,000 ancient races. After blocking this attack, when Zhao Yufei's body blossomed with a layer of purple light, which turned into thousands of rings with domineering power. The terrifying aura of the 10,000 ancient races bloodline caused the heaven-earth yuan qi to boil, and a purple light shot into the sky. At that instant, the bloodlines of the disciples and even some kings below the true king stage started to tremble. Apart from the two emperors, everyone's true yuan and bloodlines were suppressed, and they found it hard to breathe. Even the two emperors felt a faint pressure from the bloodline suppression. Shua! Shua! Nan Gongsheng turned into a silver blur and dodged Zhao Yufei's charge, not wanting to take the attack head-on. Even then, he was also shaken by that counterattack, causing his qi and blood to churn. Offense, speed, defense, they're almost perfect. Nan Gongsheng took a deep breath and felt troubled. Although he had the spatial spiritual body and the heaven spiritual body, he didn't have a 10,000 ancient races bloodline. The 10,000 ancient races list recorded all the top bloodline races from the ancient times. The top 20 bloodlines were almost perfect. Nan Gongsheng used everything he had in the following battle. He even took out the Qiankuan sword, but he was only able to suppress Zhao Yufei for a while. What was unbelievable was that Zhao Yufei's true yuan wasn't just strong, it was limitless. After fighting for half a day, it had become even more refined. Most bloodlines of the 10,000 ancient races had extremely strong recovery abilities. On the other hand, Zhao Yufei's recovery abilities were strong, but the main reason was because of her spiritual race bloodline. To put it simply, other people's veritable essence energy usually needed to be stored in their dantian and condensed into a crystal core. But with the spirit race's bloodline, their entire bodies were equivalent to the dantian, the source of their power. In terms of true yuan reserves, the spiritual race's experts were 10 times, or even 100 times greater than those of the same level. Therefore, in a battle of attrition, almost no race was a match for the spirit race. The bloodline of the spirit race is truly powerful. If Sheng hadn't broken through to the king tier, he would have suffered a crushing defeat. Emperor Mekong broke out in cold sweat. The top 20 bloodlines of the 10,000 ancient races were simply too powerful. Time flew by. The battle between the two geniuses was hard to determine. Although Nan Gongsheng couldn't do anything to Zhao Yufei, he was a king and had a profound understanding of spatial techniques. Protecting himself wasn't a problem. The two geniuses fought for an entire day and night. Zhao Yufei's face was not red, and her heart was not beating fast. She was calm and composed. Sweat appeared on Nan Gongsheng's forehead. He would only occasionally take out the Qiankuan sword to suppress the situation. At the same time, within the secret hall of the emperor's palace, Yufei, is this your true strength? A murmur sounded. Meow. The little thieving cat and the child demigod inspected the man who had just woken up. Whose faint purple hair had a dreamy quality to it, and it had a wicked sense of beauty that could affect one's mind. Zhao Feng sat up and opened his eyes. His left eye was a limitless purple, as if it was a flawless light purple gem that had an ancient and elegant aura. The child demigod's heart shook when he met the purple eye. What kind of eye bloodline is this, and what does it have to do with the 8 great god eyes? The child demigod didn't dare to look directly at the left eye. He roared in his heart. He was a demigod that had reincarnated. Of course. The child demigod only had a beginner demigod bloodline and a portion of his memories. His current cultivation and knowledge couldn't be compared to the demigod Kuan Yun when he was at his peak. Zhao Feng didn't look at the child demigod. His left eye pierced through the buildings and spatial barriers to see the battle on the true king's stage. Zhao Feng only saw the latter half of the battle between Zhao Yufei and Nan Gongsheng. Yufei has little heaven and earth as her shield, the purple saint partial spirit's intent, and her spiritual race bloodline. She's undefeatable against anyone below emperors. Zhao Feng analyzed Zhao Yufei's battle power very well. At the same time, Zhao Yufei, who was in the middle of battle, felt a chill on her skin. She felt as if she had been stripped naked, and all her secrets were seen through. However, that kind of penetrating gaze was a familiar feeling. Emperor Duanmu and Emperor Mekong sensed something. The god's spiritual eye's senses were much deeper than normal divine sense. Zhao Feng took back his left eye when the two emperors sensed it. Only then did his gaze land on the child demigod. Hee, you're growing very quickly. Zhao Feng had a faint smile as he inspected the child demigod. Rather than saying that the demigod was cultivating again, it was more like recovering. The demigod's blood essence wasn't simple. Furthermore, Zhao Feng had used the Immortal Springs wine, the Origin Life Force liquid, and many other treasures in order to revive a demigod. The child demigod's skin had faint golden lines on it. I couldn't tell that the demigod Kuan Yun was an expert that specialized in body strengthening. Zhao Feng couldn't help but click his tongue in wonder when he scanned over the child with his god's spiritual eye. At this moment the demigod Kuan Yun's body was even stronger than the skeletal division leaders. Master! The child demigod's hairs stood on end as Zhao Feng stared at him, as if all his secrets could be seen. Dark Heart Seed. A misty purple world appeared in Zhao Feng's left eye, and a terrifying mental energy eye bloodline power made the child demigod's consciousness freeze. What powerful soul eye bloodline power! The child demigod screamed as his consciousness was restricted. The power of the soul was so dominant that the two weren't even on the same level. He couldn't fight back and could only watch as Zhao Feng planted the dark heart seed in him again. Before falling asleep, Zhao Feng had used the dark heart seed on the child demigod once. This time, Zhao Feng's god's spiritual eye had become stronger. This time, he used the strengthened version of the dark heart seed. This time, the dark heart seed had merged with Zhao Feng's eye intent. That's right, eye intent. After the evolution of Zhao Feng's god's spiritual eye, his soul had increased by leaps and bounds, and his eye bloodline had formed eye intent. Eye intent was similar to king intent, but it was more unique. Eye intent. Only a small number of soul elemental eye bloodlines and those who have reached the king level can have it. The child demigod's heart went cold. Without a doubt. This time, the dark heart seed he used with eye intent was dozens of times stronger than last time. One had to know that. The Emperor of Death's eye intent was still in Zhao Feng's soul, and it hadn't been destroyed yet. However, Zhao Feng believed that as the god's spiritual eye evolved, it would wear down the eye intent even faster. Only he knew how much the evolution of the god's spiritual eye and how much his soul had increased. Last time, the god's spiritual eye's evolution was just a small one. This time, it's a big one. Zhao Feng stood still as his faint purple hair blew in the wind. He gave off a strong sense of pride and confidence. Last time, the element of the god's spiritual eye could change between ice and water, but the change wasn't very big. This time, the soul sea world was formed in the dimension of his left eye. Zhao Feng's soul and the god's spiritual eye had merged together and were one. The soul sea world was thousands of yards wide. There was a lake of blue eye bloodline power in the purple ocean. In the sky, the azure wind and the scarlet-purple thunderclouds clashed with each other, emitting a powerful aura. The god's spiritual eye's evolution this time is in the soul dimension. Zhao Feng stood up and slowly walked forward. His current soul origin power was several times stronger than normal void god realm kings. He circulated the 10,000 divine thoughts technique and condensed his soul origin power. One thought turning 100. Zhao Feng split his thoughts into 1 or 200, and he was overjoyed. Even Duan Muqing had only reached the level of one thought turning 1,000. As for Zhao Feng, he only needed to cultivate for a while and he should be able to turn 500 into one thought turning one thought into 100. Immediately afterwards, Zhao Feng tried to wear down the wisp of death intent in his soul sea. The dark symbol of the Eye of Death's aura started to weaken as Zhao Feng wore it down. It's several times faster than before. Zhao Feng was overjoyed. As long as he could get rid of this symbol, he would be able to escape from the Emperor of Death. An hour later, after merging some of the ancient dream realm aura into the 10,000 divine thoughts technique, Zhao Feng's purple soul sea became stronger, and his aura was concealed. At this moment, the sparring between Zhao Yufei and Nan Gongsheng finally came to an end on the True King stand. Emperor Mikong, why don't we call this a draw? Emperor Duanmu said with a smile. Sure. This was exactly what Emperor Mikong wanted. Boom. Boom. The two Emperor intents instantly stopped the battle between the two geniuses. Your spatial techniques are indeed extremely profound. Let's call this a draw. Zhao Yufei smiled faintly. Nan Gongsheng was a king, and he had a mysterious spatial technique. He was indeed hard to deal with. Junior martial sister Zhao's spiritual race bloodline is enviable. I can only try to stay undefeated. Nan Gongsheng let out a breath. The spiritual race bloodline was just too perfect. He felt helpless. Zhao Yufei was younger than him, and it was almost certain that she would surpass him in the future. After all, the specialty of the spiritual race was their cultivation speed. As long as one's mental energy was strong enough, they could increase their cultivation limitlessly. Yufei, you did well in this battle. You didn't even use the true power of your little world to fight Nan Gongsheng to this level. The Purple Saint Partial Spirit praised. Through this spar, Zhao Yufei's strength had been tempered. One could predict that after this battle, Zhao Yufei's name would definitely shake the true martial sacred land. On the same day, Zhao Yufei and Duan Muqing returned to the emperor's palace together. Big brother Zhao Feng, you're finally awake. Zhao Yufei was overjoyed as she looked at Zhao Feng's beautiful purple hair. The faint undulation of soul power radiating from Zhao Feng surprised Duan Muqing. Even though he was an emperor, he was unable to see through Zhao Feng's true strength. Seeing this, Duan Muqing gave Zhao Yufei a look. Big brother Zhao Feng, maybe we should spar. Zhao Yufei gave a playful smile. Chapter 679. Spar. Zhao Feng's heart trembled and he almost tripped. The current Zhao Yufei wasn't the same as before. When her spiritual race bloodline awakened, she broke through the barrier of cultivation and challenged a king. It was like a miracle. Zhao Feng's god's spiritual eye saw the battle just now very clearly. Both Nan Gongsheng and Zhao Yufei's battle power was something that he could only look up to before he fell asleep. It could be said that they were several streets ahead of him. What? Brother Feng doesn't dare. Zhao Yufei smiled and tried to provoke him. Zhao Feng rolled his eyes. Ever since I was young in the Zhao family, I, Yufei, could only chase after you. Zhao Yufei's eyelashes fluttered as reminiscence appeared on her face. Sun Feather City. Zhao clan. Zhao Feng murmured. In the blink of an eye, so many years had passed. The powerful Zhao clan in his eyes in the past was like a young age. Now, the two's relationship was the same, and it was even closer. The difference was, at this moment, the two stood at the peak of the geniuses of the island zones. Under Zhao Yufei's provocation, Zhao Feng was as calm as before and he revealed a look of reminiscence. Fine, I accept your challenge. Zhao Feng had a smile on his face, and he was as calm and confident as ever. Even though he didn't have much of a chance of winning against the current Zhao Yufei stared at him, her clear eyes dazed for a moment, and a faint blush appeared on her face. The image of the blue-haired youth in her eyes hadn't changed at all. Begin. Emperor Duanmu laughed as an emperor power covered Zhao Feng and Zhao Yufei. Shua. The scene in front of them flashed, and they found themselves in a dark green dimension. In front of them was green, hills, grass, lakes, and forests. Master, this is the space you created? Zhao Feng was surprised. The space before him wasn't illusory. Instead, it was truly materialized, and it was filled with a vast amount of wood attribute energy. Of course. Compared to the Purple Saint ruins and demigod Forgotten Garden, this physical dimension was still in its early stages. The difference between a king and an emperor, a sacred lord and a demigod was obvious. Normal kings could at most create spatial domains, but they couldn't create physical space. On the other hand, great emperors could materialize their domains. There's nothing strange about that. With the strength of your soul and the advantage of your god eye, you're not far from being able to create a dimension. Duan Muqing said with a smile. In order to create a spatial domain, the most important thing was that one's soul had to be strong, as well as the level of one's state. I can do it too. Zhao Feng was somewhat surprised. However, he had expected that he had been able to construct the forbidden illusion space and the illusory city maze a long time ago, even though those were all spaces constructed by spiritual illusions. However, as long as one's soul and realm were strong enough, the space created by one's mind could also be turned into a domain, or even materialized. As a martial emperor, Duan Muqing could materialize his domain. Of course, he could only materialize it. This kind of dimension could barely be called his own little world. However, in reality, there was no such thing as a world. There was also a certain difference between the substance inside and the substance in the outside world. It was like the difference between a fresh flower and a decorative flower, a real mountain and a fake one. Zhao Feng's God's spiritual eye had gone through a big change and it had seen more than before. Being able to do this is already a legendary skill that the billions of cultivators in the fan universe can't even dream of. Zhao Feng calmed himself down. He would try to create his own domain after breaking through to the Void God realm. Within the dimension of an emperor. On a green patch of grass, Zhao Feng and Zhao Yufei looked at each other. I will restrict your abilities. Duan Muqing spoke. With a thought, a surge of magnificent power descended onto Zhao Feng and Zhao Yufei. Zhao Feng's heart dropped. This was the little world of an emperor, and Duan Muqing's intent represented heaven's will. Your strength has been suppressed to 1/10 of your original. Duan Muqing nodded his head. If he didn't restrict their strength, the battle power of Zhao Feng and Zhao Yufei, who were both at the Void God realm, would probably turn his small dimension into a mess. Brother Zhao Feng, be careful. Zhao Yufei pursed her lips into a smile, and purple light blossomed from her body, transforming into a streak of purple light that flashed away. So fast. Zhao Feng's God's spiritual eye could see Zhao Yufei's speed. One had to know that. In the Emperor's dimension, their strength was suppressed to 1/10. Zhao Yufei was still able to move at such speed. It was extraordinary. Purple lightning wind ring. Zhao Feng exclaimed as a layer of purple lightning surrounded his body and shot out in all directions. Bam! The purple light on Zhao Yufei's body was strong and blocked the purple lightning. It completely ignored Zhao Feng's purple destruction wind lightning. Zhao Feng's expression changed. Then, a familiar fragrance was right in front of him. Pa! Zhao Yufei waved her hand and a purple light slashed towards Zhao Feng. Instantly. Zhao Feng's true yuan and bloodline couldn't circulate smoothly. Whether it was in terms of true essence or bloodline power, Zhao Yufei suppressed him. Break! Zhao Feng roared as a layer of dark purple scales appeared on his body. Ripples of blue water appeared on his body. The defense of his bloodline and the power of his water bloodline were activated. At the same time, a layer of scarlet wind lightning appeared on Zhao Feng's palm, and the fist was like a blazing scarlet tornado that met the attack head-on. Scarlet destruction wind lightning. Duan Muqing's eyes lit up. Zhao Feng's scarlet destruction wind lightning had reached the beginner level and he had grasped it to a certain degree. Boom! The purple light shined and tore apart the scarlet fist with an aura that seemed to look down on all races. Tang tang! 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 Zhao Feng retreated 3 steps as his blood boiled. The true yuan of the two weren't on the same level. If it weren't for the fact that Zhao Feng had a defensive bloodline and his state of existence was stronger than normal kings, he would have been sent flying already. As expected of the spiritual race's bloodline. Zhao Feng took a deep breath. This battle was very stressful. Although his God's spiritual eye had gone through a huge change, it didn't help him much in the physical dimension. Zhao Yufei's offense, speed, and defense were all flawless. Hehe, I've only used 40 to 50% of my power. Zhao Yufei smiled like a flower. This was the first time she had suppressed Zhao Feng since the start of the Zhao clan. Wings of wind and lightning. A pair of wind-lightning wings extended from Zhao Feng's back. They were scarlet-purple in color and had a destructive aura. Pang! Zhao Feng's speed and offense increased dramatically. At this moment, his battle power was close to the Void God realm. Zhao Feng chose to fight in close combat, which allowed him to use his advantage in physical strength. Although Zhao Yufei's true yuan had reached the Void God realm, her state of existence and physical strength weren't as strong as Zhao Feng's. Boom! The scarlet wind lightning and the purple crystalline aura clashed repeatedly, and the terrifying shockwaves left behind craters that were dozens of feet in diameter. This was when the two's strength had been suppressed to 1/10 of their original. Zhao Feng's cultivation is only close to the middle stage Great Origin Core realm. On the other hand, Yufei's cultivation is comparable to a half-step Void God realm. Emperor Duanmu sighed. It wasn't strange for Zhao Feng to lose this battle. The difference is too big unless I reach the late-stage Great Origin Core realm and comprehend the purple destruction wind lightning to more than 50%. Zhao Feng murmured. Even if he used his wings of wind and lightning, he could barely fight against Zhao Yufei. With the spiritual body of the spiritual race, Zhao Feng's attacks wouldn't be able to break through Zhao Yufei's defense. Not only him, but even the number one genius of the sacred land, Nan Gongsheng, wasn't able to do so. From the looks of it, Zhao Yufei hadn't used her full strength yet. 100 moves later, sweat appeared on Zhao Feng's forehead, and his breathing quickened. Zhao Yufei's expression didn't change. She had a legendary bloodline that was ranked in the top 20 of the 10,000 ancient races, which allowed her to look down on other geniuses. I admit defeat. Zhao Feng had a calm expression as he stopped the battle. There was no point in continuing. Even if Zhao Yufei didn't use her full strength, she would be able to exhaust Zhao Feng to death. Admit defeat. You haven't even used your eye bloodline yet. Zhao Yufei harumphed lightly. Zhao Feng's god's spiritual eye had obviously reached a new level after this. However, Zhao Feng didn't use his god's spiritual eye just now. My god's spiritual eye has evolved more towards the soul. Soul-type battles are too dangerous. Zhao Feng shook his head. If it was a physical injury, it would be very easy for an emperor to recover. Furthermore, Duanmu Qing specialized in the element of wood and specialized in healing. God's spiritual eye. That's true. Duanmu Qing started to think. No. Zhao Yufei didn't back down, and her eyes were filled with determination. This battle isn't over yet. She was confident in herself. Zhao Yufei wanted to defeat Zhao Feng in his perfect state. Fine, but I'll only use 3 moves at most. Zhao Feng was slightly helpless. Okay. This time, it was Duanmu Qing who answered for Zhao Yufei. Soul Eye bloodline techniques were too dangerous, and they could be considered forbidden. Zhao Feng only used 3 moves, which meant that he wanted to stop. Hu Zhao Feng's faint purple hair fluttered in the wind, and it was as beautiful as a dream. Zhao Yufei's soul shook. In the next instant a misty purple world appeared in Zhao Feng's left eye, and a terrifying soul eye bloodline power pierced through heaven and earth. At that moment, the heaven-earth yuan qi froze, and there was a suffocating pressure in the soul dimension. What powerful soul eye bloodline power! It wasn't just Zhao Yufei. Even the purple saint partial spirit exclaimed in her little heaven and earth. Shua! The soul dimension shook, and one could faintly see a purple eye shadow with a terrifying magnificent power that suppressed heaven and earth. The purple illusion eye was different from the space transference eye, it was a pure form of mental energy. Furthermore, it was a unique eye intent. Not good. Zhao Yufei circulated her little heaven and earth and her half-step void god realm intent to resist. Her mind started to tremble, and her thoughts were completely suppressed. Boom! Her half-step void god realm intent was as weak as a baby's and was instantly shattered. Even though she had a little heaven and earth behind her, it was mostly used to defend against heaven and earth intent. It was useless against soul eye bloodline intent. Within a small dimension, Zhao Feng stood where he was. Just the intent of his eye formed a magnificent power that covered the heavens and earth, as well as a terrifying pressure on the soul. What kind of monster is this Zhao Feng? He's just a measly sovereign lord, but he's already formed eye intent. The child demigod in the ancient metal ring felt his heart go cold. Zhao Feng's eye intent could probably suppress kings in the soul dimension. On top of that, some forbidden eye bloodline techniques could be used. One thing was certain. Zhao Feng's eye intent could instantly kill sovereign lords and half-step void god realms. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.